Hello everyone, and welcome to my English reading of Digimon Seekers Chapter 4, Sons of Chaos, Seekers. Now this is presumably the last chapter of Digimon Seekers, as it is meant to wrap up in April, so a year after it started, and of course I'm recording this just before I read Chapter 4 Part 1, which is in December, but presumably that is the final chapter for Digimon Seekers. And as of recording this, no idea what's next, if they're going to do another web novel or what have you, but presumably we will learn by the time that this is being released in its full form, once Chapter 4 concludes. So I guess I'll do a little bit of a wrap-up in the outro. Of course, for my overall review of the chapter and the rest of Seekers, check out the LostinTranslationmon YouTube channel, because this is more or less just an English reading, as the previous 3 chapters have been as well. And of course, if you haven't listened to any of the other readings, I suggest you do so before listening to this podcast / audiobook. So, of course, should go without saying, I am not a professional voice actor. I'm recording these week to week unless something comes up, so the voices that I do for each character might change just a little bit. I'll try to do my best to make sure that they are as consistent as possible. So without further ado, let's start with Chapter 4, Sons of Chaos, Seekers. Chapter 4, Part 1. I'll turn the digital world upside down to find what I'm after. All eyes were on the gateway at the centre of the wall slum. The SOC's media blitz on Grimm worked. Every codecracker in the world, and every Digimon living in the wall slum, was on their side. The codecrackers thought it was some sort of festival. The Digimon were driven either by homesickness or fury at a system that expelled them from their homeland. A revolutionary fervour was in the air, one that would not soon be extinguished. The horde of gatekeepers, consumerate rule followers, closed ranks around the gateway such that none of the Digimon tainted by real-world data could enter. The system's orders were clear. Keep out. Alas, it felt too late. The network was about to take a bold step, thanks to the collision of the real and digital worlds and the bonds between humans and Digimon. As the fighting raged on, a lone Digimon crested the rim of the caldera. It perched there, visible from just about anywhere in the wall slum. Dorugoramon, Mega, Beast Dragon, Data. Though technically a beast dragon by classification, it was better described as a humanoid dragon, with wings flanking a symmetrical silver body. At the end of its articulated metallic whip-like tail was a fearsome blade with a shape reminiscent of an arrowhead. The wings were like those of the dragons of Western fantasy novels. If all the skin and membrane between the bones had been stripped away, and the bones weren't bones but blades. Dorugoramon itself was reportedly born of a Digicore's daydream. Dorumon, its base form, contains the code for a legendary dragon within its Digicore. Accounts of the dragon's appearance are numerous. Nearly all paint a picture of the beast as an all-powerful enemy, a mega-level destructive force without equal. Kosuke Kizakata, aka Tartarus, was now one with this fearsome beast, its beating heart. He looked out over the battlefield, observing the hordes of bot-driven Digimon that the codecrackers had unleashed upon the gateway as a result of his incitement. He saw the denizens of the wall slum in full revolt. The gatekeeper horde desperate to keep them from entering the depths. This massive traffic, everyone riding the wave of this festival, as he had called it, they were all here doing the bidding of Kosuke and his partner Digimon. The stage was set. The actors had taken their places. The show was ready to begin. Whatever happened now, 2 things were true. 1, it was completely out of Kosuke and company's hands. 2, there was no stopping it. Golden armor! A torrent of golden light shot down from the network seas above. Since time immemorial, legend spoke of a dragon god who ruled over the seas. One known to swell rivers until they broke their banks. or swallow structures with muddy currents. That very god now shot down from above, a whoosh of air culminating in the icy clanging of blades. The light gradually faded, twisting and peeling away until it resembled a whirlpool forming on the water's surface. Orumon, Mega, Beast Dragon, Vaccine. The creature that tore through the sky was none other than the Mega-level form of Rudamon, partner Digimon to Shu Yulin of the Digipolice. This dragon, too, was born of a Digicorp's daydreams. In this instance, modelled on the Digicorp's data on various Japanese myths revolving around fierce dragons and military commanders. The resulting warrior dragon wore regal Japanese armour and wielded twin blades in its talons. "Not so much as a hello, Yulin?" Kosuke asked, his voice flat and calm. Yulin let out a gasp, but Dorogoromon deftly parried Arumon's flurry of sword strikes. Arumon took a moment to regroup. In its left talons it held Gairu Sarajin, and its right talons Gairu Udajin. From the wings on its back extended a pair of blades known collectively as Gaiba Daimajin. The golden armor attack enraged all four in an attempt to target the enemy's weak points with strikes strong enough to cleave into the earth. It was enough to make ordinary foes look as though they'd been tossed into a food processor and chopped to bits. "We struck with golden armor and he's still standing? You didn't pull any punches, did you, Arumon?" Yulin asked curtly. Digimon gain focus as they digivolve, often causing them to grow even more specialised in a way that makes them feel detached and aloof to most humans. This was especially true for Arumon, the dragon god of the waters, who held the power of a raging river within them. There was no room for a process that considered the feelings of mere mortals, friend or foe. Digipolice Investigative Unit 11 Deputy Squad Leader Shu Yulin, or shall I refer to you as the Crossroads Witch?" Tartarus taunted. "The legendary Tartarus should know better than to call a woman by a name she shed long ago," Yulin shot back. They kept one another's Digicores in check. A split second of lowered defense or one wrong guess could cost either of them their lives. "Didn't expect a sneak attack from a mega-level Digimon, I have to say," Tartarus continued. "Well, you digivolved first." "And now I have the honour of meeting Arumon. How lucky." "Likewise, Dorogoromon." Professor Usenji's hardest-working students were reunited at last. To call them one-time acquaintances or childhood friends would be a gross understatement. They once entrusted a portion of their lives to one another, investing their futures and devoting them to their beloved professor in order to bring a monumental project to life. They were of the same mind, albeit not actually mind-linked, until they weren't. That connection vanished in an instant, along with Saya Usenji. "Here we are, both in mega-level Digimon. Seems the answers we've sought all our lives, to all the theories we've debated over the years, lie on the other side of this fight," Kosuke said, honouring their lost connection. Mega-level Digimon were often seen as drawn swords, a sign that the time for talk had ended. "And what do you think this nonsense is going to get you exactly?" "Nonsense? No, what we're witnessing is the greatest revolution in human history. Isn't that right, Dorogoromon?" "The digital world is filled with freaks and weirdos. That point I'll concede." Dorogoromon clasped its talons together before its body and focused its attack in energy in preparation to launch a devastating attack. "Dorudin!" A shockwave burst out from Dorogoromon's body. Pure destructive energy ripped through the air. Arumon blocked the blast with its twin blades, which rang out as each successive punch from the shockwave pushed them into one another. Clang, clang, clang. Arumon soon deflected the blast and stepped around it. The shockwave, unabated, tore through the air behind Arumon, sending a wide swathe of Codecracker Digimon and gatekeepers flying as it went. The blast slammed into the gateway, kicking up a cloud of dust. The ground shook as a massive hole opened in the caldera wall above the gateway, and the whole wall began to crumble. Deputy Squad Leader Satsuki Tamihime watched from below as Orumon and Arugumon fought, marvelling at the way they could so easily change the terrain. "Squad Leader!" she shouted involuntarily. From that one strike alone, she could tell Dorogoromon was capable of destruction beyond comprehension. Yulin, for her part, knew she could count on one hand the number of hackers and codecrackers in the world who managed to last even 5 minutes with Tartarus at the height of his power and lived to tell the tale. And she set her containment plan in motion. An entire squadron of Cargodramon carrying additional Digipolice officers descended upon the caldera, dropping heliborne units who formed up along its interior wall. The various platoons of the Commandramon squad were led by Mechanorimon, helmed by Satsuki, and her partner Numamon, who were crammed into the seat together. Numamon slid its bobbing eyeball feelers through a small gap in Mechanorimon to get a better look at the situation from the outside. "All squads, get in position! All SOC members and our targets! Don't worry about anybody else!" Satsuki ordered. The message was clear. Prevent the SOC from cracking the gateway. Tartarus had all but made the game plan for them when he announced in his video that the SOC would do everything it could to try to breach the gateway. Whether or not that was actually possible was immaterial in the moment. They didn't need a reason anymore. All that mattered was stopping the Chaos agents they called codecrackers. "Enemy sighted, 9 o'clock!" a Cargodramon barked over the comms channel. Satsuki turned to assess the threat. It was a lone squadron of gatekeepers separated from the horde by Dorogoromon's blast, now flitting about in Digipolice airspace. Satsuki clicked her tongue in disapproval and spun the Mechanorimon around to target a single gatekeeper with its linear lens. She fired a twinkle beam, vaporizing the gatekeeper in midair. In nearly the same instant, Satsuki issued the command to all units to open fire. The Cargodramon readied their Gatling guns. The Commandramon, the main force in this operation by dint of their numbers, readied their assault rifles. The resulting fire was deafening. The smell of gunpowder filled Satsuki's nostrils as the remaining units in the stranded gatekeeper horde were annihilated. "I see the gatekeepers think we're the enemy too. Great," Satsuki huffed. Didn't they know the Digipolice were trying to protect the gateway? Alas, there was no way to communicate with the gatekeepers and reinforce the notion that the Digipolice were actually on the same side. Now they'd have to contend with gatekeepers who saw any and all Digimon who had been tainted by real-world data as their enemy. "I'll be able to help you all out if I can just get them to ultimate level." Satsuki had pled her case to be put on the front lines for this sortie, only for Yulin to issue a calm and cold order. "Get in the Mechanorimon. You'll serve as company commander." Yulin was, in so many words, warning Satsuki not to exceed her mind-link limits again. This time, there'd be no way to bring her back from the brink, and the Force couldn't afford to lose her. "Squad leader! So long as our target is Tartarus, I have to be the one to do this." Yulin was now locked into that fight, and Satsuki was the only mind-linker she could trust to control the tempo on the battlefield. If Satsuki exceeded her mind-link limit, the entire mission might as well be lost. She wouldn't be able to reconnect right away either. The Digipolice had formal protocols, and crossing the C or L lines meant the disciplinary actions and the entry of a written apology into the officer's record. "Satsuki, I need you out there issuing commands on the battlefield," Yulin told her. Her compatibility with Numamon meant she could remain mind-linked longer than anyone else on the Force. That gave her the best chance of foiling the SOC's plans. "Seals 1 reporting in," a voice said, interrupting Satsuki's train of thought. A Sealshamon squad had once again infiltrated the wall slum. "This is Satsuki. Do you have eyes on the target?" "Search is underway," Sealshamon replied, scanning the area for leaders of the SOC. "Keep looking. Tartarus's big splash here might be a diversion. The others could still be lurking in the shadows, waiting to strike." "Copy that. Over." The next instant, something landed with a thud on Mechanorimon's domed head, causing Satsuki to let out a startled yelp. Someone had joined the fray from the cliffs behind her and the rest of the squad. using Mechanorimon's head as a stepping stone. A Digimon and a human landed right in front of the company commander. "The hell are you doing, Eiji?" "Sorry, I slipped. Hang on." Satsuki took a brief, bewildered moment to process the sight of the wolf-like Digimon and their human partner before her eyes, and found herself filled with an all-consuming rage. "Eiji Nagasumi and his mangy mutt." "Wait, how do you know my name?" "And he calling a mangy mutt," Lugumon snarled, baring their teeth. "Hang on, I recognize that nickname, and that voice." "Shoot, this is Digipolice unit," Lugumon said, looking at the giant police written on the Mechanorimon and the body armor of the various Commandramon. Unbeknownst to Satsuki, Eiji and Lugumon had just stepped off the subway and found their way up to the mountain of the caldera. "At last, your time has come!" Satsuki shrieked with delight. "Satsuki, I knew it was you!" Eiji shouted back. "Ah, the woman we chased out of the 9th district? Where's her gross slug friend?" Lugumon said, as they both looked high and low for the Numemon who was right above them, crammed into the Mechanorimon's domed head. "I'll show you who's gross, Eiji Nagasumi, you little punk, using my Mechanorimon's head as a stepping stone, so you can go wherever you please." "Oh wow, you're inside that Mechanorimon, huh?" Eiji said, finally taking notice of the Numemon's eyeballs poking out of the Mechanorimon's dome. "So the slug finally found a shell," Lugumon taunted. "Careful, you'll tick her off again, Lugumon," Eiji said, egging his partner on. Silence. Eiji faltered. This wasn't the routine. She was supposed to say something back. I'm the commander. I'm the commander of this battlefield," Satsuki said, calming and convincing herself as much as anyone else. "What's up, Satsuki? You're not as spiky as before." "Shut up, criminal, you filthy codecracker." "Gyro break!" Mechanorimon's arm began to spin rapidly as it heaved forward, launching a corkscrew punch that fell through the air with a terrifying mechanical whir and drilled into the earth. Lugumon deftly hopped aside. "Ugh," Eiji groaned as a hunk of rock smacked him in the chin. "This is a war zone, you little creep. Don't think you can just get away with that kind of talk here." Satsuki yelled as Mechanorimon locked onto Eiji and shared the targeting data with every Commandramon unit in the area. Every single rifle in the squadron was trained on Eiji. Hololized humans in the digital world were just data, just like everything else here. If the Commandramon all opened fire, he would die. He let out a small whimper. "Eiji, cut your holization!" Lugumon yelled at thin air, for Eiji was one step ahead, safely back in his partner's digicore. "You mean business today? What am I wanted for now?" At least he'd be safe from major damage inside Lugumon's digicore. He just had to make sure Lugumon didn't take too many hits or get killed themselves. He was out of immediate danger, but far from out of the woods, as it were. "Wanted? This isn't some ordinary patrol or manhunt. I've been deployed for battle. The SOC will face the full force of the Digipolice and brought to justice for their violation of the Digitally Submersive Activities Prevention Act." "What?" Eiji yelled. "We're taking you out, whether you like it or not. Fire!" Muzzle flashes lit up the area as the Commandramon unleashed a hail of bullets from their M16 assassin rifles. Lugumon, sensing they were about to open fire, dove behind a nearby boulder. "Lugumon, you okay?" "She's at her wit's end this time. She's got a squad of 100 or more Commandramon at her disposal." This was a massive upgrade from their last encounter in the 9th district, where she'd had a dozen or so units at best. "Well, she said she's a company commander now. I guess she's moved over to commanding digital warfare units?" Whatever the case, Eiji had to reassess how he dealt with her. This wasn't a game anymore. It never was. Now that he thought about it, she was a deputy squad leader in the Digipolice, for crying out loud. "It was just a Numemon. We'd just have to worry about smelling like crap," Lugumon snarked. "Ah, that again? Whoa!" A deafening roar accompanied a ferocious blast of air that threatened to pin Lugumon to the ground. "They've got a squadron of Kagurumon with them too?" The massive Digimon encircled Lugumon from above, trying to pin the wolf down with their tail rotors as their Gatling guns took aim and prepared to turn Lugumon into a pile of ash. Alternatively, they could jump out from cover and get obliterated by the Commandramon firing squad. Neither option was appealing. Satsuki opened a virtual monitor within the Mechanorimon and ascertained Lugamon's position via a feed from the Cargodramon. She ordered the Commandramon on the front lines to ready their DCD bombs. She'd have them lob a few over the boulder to smoke Lugamon out. A comms channel opened. "This is Seals 1, target acquired. Send me the coordinates. I would, but..." Sealsdramon hesitated. "But what? They're nearly on top of you." An explosion lit the sky above as the Cargodramon took a direct hit from the side. Smoke filled the air as the one of the Digimon's tail rotors was cleaved from its body. The remaining Cargodramon scattered into the wind in retreat. "Starting without me, AG?" Tisk, 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 Marvin said over the SOC leader's chat, his Airdramon appearing as the smoke cleared.
Chapter 4, Part 2. Lugamon leapt into the cloud of smoke. The damaged Cargodramon belched out and reappeared on the other side, next to Airdramon. "Oh, you really saved us there, Airdramon," AG chirped with relief. "Thanks, old man," Lugamon added. "You two, taking on an entire Digipolice unit? You don't know the meaning of fear, do you?" Marvin said, with a mixture of exasperation and admiration from the little window in the corner of AG's virtual monitor. "Here's the deal with Satsuki, the commander over there, I mean," AG began, as he shared his data on Satsuki with Lugamon and Airdramon. "Okay, so, she's piloting that big, beefy Mechanorimon. She's the deputy squad leader you sent packing," Marvin said, perusing her stats and assessing the threat. "Yeah, she means business today. Her personality's done a complete 180 compared to when I ran into her during the SOC entrance exam." "Yeah, I can tell. No ordinary mindlinker can command an entire company of Commandramon," the songsmith said with a heavy sigh. "So you're saying she's stronger than you?" "I definitely don't have the concentration to command all those units, I'll say that much. Hey, you guys in position or what?" Marvin shouted into the SOC leader's chat. He opened up the schematic of the area to get a better look, and saw that they were. "Commandramon have a basic camouflage feature, so stay sharp and try to avoid getting ambushed. Remember, our target is the Digipolice platoon. Keep them off Tartarus's back and out of his business." AG led the mission briefing from Kosuke's safe house. The plan was broken into 2 phases. Phase 1. Incite an attack on the gateway among the codecrackers and Digimon living in the wall slum. Phase 2. Wait for the Digipolice to mobilise and draw them off, forcing them to fight along 2 simultaneous fronts. AG's role in Phase 1 was to incite the wall slum citizens to attack. In Phase 2, they correctly assumed it would come down to a fight between Yulin and Kosuke in their megaforms. That left the remainder of the SOC leadership with the task of occupying the remaining Digipolice forces. AG now recognised Yulin as the officer he passed by as he left DDL, and he could tell she had something to work out with Kosuke. When he moved, she moved. That was between them, however. All AG had to do was ensure that the Digipolice didn't interfere with the cracking of the gateway and the push to reach the depths. No matter how much the fight between these 2 legendary dragons rocked the skies above. Old Man Tartarus and Dorogoramon will take care of the Digipolice's top brass. We just have to worry about keeping the Digipolice and the gatekeepers in check, right? AG asked. "That's right. As long as the crossroads, which is in play, we won't be able to focus on cracking the gateway," Marvin replied, referring to Yulin by her one-time hacker, or was she a codecracker, AG wondered, alias. "Then I'll leave him to it. Lugamon and I," AG said as he turned to face the Commandramon units. "AG and I will take the fight to these pests. Let's do it. Lugamon Digivolve." Lugamon promptly digivolved into their champion form, Lugamon. "Flame blow!" Lugamon's tail flicked to one side as the beast, covered in shimmering flames, leapt diagonally and slammed into the Commandramon's unit's flank. Marvin watched Lugamon take off like a shot and issued his orders to the SOC leaders. "Everyone, get after those Commandramon!" The other SOC leaders rushed to AG's aid. Marvin activated a small army of bot-controlled Espimon. Though they were merely rookies, they had flight and camouflage capabilities, making them ideal for sowing chaos and confusion on the battlefield without demanding a lot from the tool suite that deployed them. Marvin immediately sent them flying into the horde of gatekeepers and ordered them to open fire. The gatekeeper horde swirled around, shimmering like a coiling snake as they attempted to course correct and account for this new threat. Marvin's Espimon just as quickly turned tail and sped off, drawing the horde's attention. As Espimon exploded here and there as they drew the horde directly over the Digipolice's Commandramon unit. You've really done it now, Songsmith! Satsuki shouted, clicking her tongue in disapproval as the gatekeeper horde suddenly descended on her unit. Marvin's Zerdramon hung back behind the main SOC forces, delivering orders with a commanding view of the battlefield, just as Satsuki did for Yulin. So we're on the same page then! Fire! Satsuki yelled. Twinkle! The twinkle beam erupted from the linear lens on the Mechanorimon's torso with its signature sound, mowing down the gatekeeper horde. The rest of the Digipolice force launched an anti-air attacks at the same time, dropping the gatekeepers out of the air like so many hunters dropping a flock of slow-moving turkeys. But that was enough. The distraction worked, and left them open on the ground. Lugarmon continued pounding the forces on the ground, decimating the right flank in no time at all, as they worked their way into the heart of the Digipolice's army. Keep going, Lugarmon, Eiji said, encouraging his partner. Like I was gonna stop! Lugamon shot back as they leapt from one Commandramon to the next, their claws tearing through body armour and sending the units flying through the air in their wake. There's a Mechanorimon up ahead! That one's a platoon commander class, Lugamon said, eyeing the Mechanorimon commanding the 50-troop strong Commandramon force on the left flank. Think you can hit it from here? It's in range, Lugamon said, leaping into the air. Howling Burner! They barked, unleashing a torrent of flame that scorched the commander Mechanorimon below. Left flank's firepower dwindling! Satsuki fumed as the direct hit to the commanding Mechanorimon lit up her display. Lugarmon torched the left flank's Mechanorimon and continued to romp through the lines of troops beyond, charging ever deeper into the Digipolice's ranks. The Commandramon were fiercely loyal, however, and held their ground in the face of such terrifying power. Not a single one abandoned its position, and they fell back and regrouped. Eiji's dangerous, Satsuki said quietly as she readied her next order. She had 2 aces up her sleeve, and it was time to use one of them. Deputy Squad Leader Tamahime! Ready to move on your order, the other one added soon after. We'll stop them, Tachibana, Sakurada. Hit the Lugamon with everything you've got, Satsuki yelled. The 2 units sprung into motion a second later. Lugamon broke through the last of the Commandramon's troop defences and began tearing up the rim of the caldera. The once stalwart left flank was now in complete disarray. Its Mechanorimon commander scorched from chest to shoulder in flames that continued to burn. Did you take it out? No, it was just a surface level burn. The shot wouldn't render the Mechanorimon incapacitated, but it definitely left the left flank weakened. Eiji surveyed the battlefield through Lugamon's eyes. The first thing that he saw was the bitter fight between Yulin and Kosuke in the skies above the gateway. Whoa, is that Doraemon's megaform? So that's what Tyrus's Digimon looks like when it's at full power? The other, of course, was Orumon's megaform. We've got to do something about that Orumon, or else we'll never have a shot at cracking the gateway. That's going to be tricky anyways, considering the Gatekeepers, the other Codecrackers Digimon, the Warslum Digimon, and the Digipolice forces are all mixing it up down here. For now, though, we've only got one mission, protect Tartarus's Darugorumon, which for the moment meant letting their fight with Orumon play out. Doraemon and I will emerge victorious, so as long as we're one-on-one, I won't lose to Yulin, Kosuke had said at the end of the mission briefing. He didn't reveal why he was so sure he'd win, but Eiji didn't think he was bluffing and decided to take him at his word. Should I digivolve one more time? Lugamon wondered aloud, looking at the fight the Codecrackers and Warslum Digimon were giving to the Gatekeepers. It looked like there was a chance to tip the scales. He thought back to the explosive jump in power digivolving afforded Digimon. Very few codecrackers and hackers in the world could control a Digimon in its megaform. One would have to be a double S-class mindlinker to even establish a connection with a mega-level Digimon. I definitely want to know what it's like to hit that level of power, and I will. I will get on Kosuke's level. Eiji could at least picture, however faintly, the path forward, one that would lead him to the pinnacle of mind-linking skill. What did it even take to become an elite mind-linker in the first place? Professor Risenji's love of Digimon? Kosuke's trust in Digimon, too, sure. Ultimately, though, it required perseverance. It took 10, maybe even 20 years of practice. Courage, grit, accountability, and dedication. A willingness to put your life on the line for the digital world. Everyone wanted something different out of this. The codecrackers wanted to take their chances in the depths. Leon and the hackers wanted to see justice served. Yulin and the police wanted order to upheld. Professor Risenji wanted to become the definitive authority on the digital world. Eiji, however, but right now we've got to crack the gateway and find Leon and Pulsemon. Eiji's sudden burst of inspiration was cut short by a surprise volley of gunfire from both sides that made Lugamon double back to avoid getting hit. They swung their head left and right, but couldn't see the enemy. They knew they hadn't been shot by invisible enemies. Someone was hiding. Hit them with Howling Burner, Lugamon. Oh yeah? In which direction exactly? All 360 degrees? Not a bad idea, actually. Lugamon shot straight up into the air, twisting as it vomited a jet of fire in a perfect circle, creating a ring of fire on the ground below. Lugamon dropped right back into its centre. They're camouflaged! Eiji shouted as Marvin's note about Commandramon having basic camouflage capabilities came screaming back into his mind. Their textures probably functioned like the protective colouring on a chameleon in an attempt to blend in with their surroundings. There you are! Lugamon shouted. They charged toward a section of the flame wall that shimmered ever so slightly out of step with the rest of the surroundings, giving away the outline of a Digimon. The shape. No. Two shapes. Deftly dodged Lugamon's charge. They deactivated their camouflage, revealing themselves and preparing for battle. Ha! Two rookie Commandramon think they can take down the demon wolf of the Castle of Nine Wolves? Don't make me laugh! Lugamon snarled, launching a rather lazy attack they thought was sure to make quick work of the pair. The Commandramon stepped out of the way of Lugamon's claws and swung their butts of their rifles around Lugamon's jaws. Ah! Lugamon was briefly stunned. Two rookie Commandramon holding their own against them? These two aren't like the others, Eiji shouted. Ah! Lugamon ran a quick scan, which turned up an ML flag. Mindlinkers! No sooner had Lugamon and Eiji arrived on the same mental page than the two Commandramon began glowing with the light of Digivolution once more. In their place now stood even more fearsome Commandramon, bulkier and better equipped than before. They still resembled bipedal carnivorous dinosaurs, but they'd definitely grown and paid a visit to the armory. High Commandramon, Champion, Android, Virus. These Digimon still wore full body armour, but now supported helmets that protected their entire head and carried riot shields. Lugamon was now in a 2-on-1 fight with two champion-level mind-linked opponents. Howling Burner! Lugamon spewed another column of flames at their foe. One of the High Commandramon absorbed the hit head-on with its shield. Clearly, they were rated for extreme temperatures. The High Commandramon in the rear shot out from behind its partner and dashed towards Lugamon, closing the gap with alarming speed. The High Commandramon raised its club, and Lugamon just managed to raise its arms to absorb the blow. Sparks flew, and Eiji's eyes stung from the light. His video feed wobbled, as if it were being jammed. Lugamon leapt backward and regrouped. Is that club electrified? Eiji yelped as he initiated a scan. The results confirmed his suspicions. It was a stun baton. I feel all tingly and dizzy. Look out, Lugamon! Eiji shouted, watching the other High Commandramon. It planted its shield on the ground and slotted its firearm into a cutout on the left side of the shield, instantly turning it into a sturdy rifle stand. But, upon closer inspection, it hadn't jammed a rifle into its shield. No. This had a drum magazine attached to it, just behind the barrel. It was a grenade launcher. DCD grenade! Thunk, 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 thunk. Went the rapid fire upgrade of the Commandromon's DCD bomb. Any way Lugomon jumped, they were sure to be hit by an explosion or shockwave. Lugomon tanked a couple hits from the shrapnel as they fled to relative safety. Eiji was cut off from Marvin and the others now. Satsuki, meanwhile, used the time to get her Commandromon brought her to completely regroup her left flank. Whatever happened, Eiji could not allow her to assist Yulin in her airborne fight against Orogoromon. The entirety of Phase 2 hinged on the battle going the SOC's way. Now, Eiji and Lugomon gave themselves over to one another so completely, it felt as though they were breathing in sync. We have to help our friends. Nothing more needed to be said. This was all for Eiji's first friend. Eiji expressed his intent. He already knew Lugomon would agree. The light of Digivolution visited upon them once more. It's time to find Leon and Pulsemon deep inside the digital world. They were perfectly in sync now. Their skills honed to perfection. Nothing, not even in the depths of the digital world, would stand in their way. Lugomon, Digivolving Eiji! They put to rest all the regrets for the things they hadn't done. From here on out, there was no straying from the path of hope and the possibility before them. The gateway rumbled with the suggestion that some quantum fluctuations were occurring in the digital world. Two beings, now one, shone with the light of Digivolution. They had the power to change the world, and would see it changed. They would open the door to all that was possible. They did not seek to win, nor did they desire the strength to emerge victorious. What would they even do with such power, if they had it? We have to help our friends. Why, even the simplest of things. They knew what they wanted, and they would risk their lives for it. Eiji and Lugomon now thought as one. There was no turning back now. The light of Digivolution would guide them forward, ever forward. Let's go, Eiji. Tartarus, Kosuke? Another voice, this one over a chat channel. Eiji looked up at Dorogoromon. The Digimon was working harder than ever to evade Oromon's fierce attacks. Come on, Eiji, Lugomon, achieve your ultimate form! Now's the time to start your journey! Someone was encouraging them, spurring them on to greater heights. Kosuke. It was Kosuke. In the midst of his life and death struggle, reaching out from one mega level to another. Eiji took his words to heart. Where there's will, there's a Digivolution. This time, they were ready to handle the power. Lugomon, Digivolve! As the light faded, a bipedal, more humanoid than not, dark beast came into view. It bore a lupine face reminiscent of an ancient deity. Its chest, arms, legs, and tail were covered by protective plating. Its hands bore 5 fingers, like that of a human. In its right hand, it held a massive mace fashioned after a wrench. Upon each of its shoulders rested massive cylinders, rumbling like mighty engines and wreathed in flame, generators that produced fire energy with perfect efficiency. Energy forced through the small slit in the underside of the cylinders formed jets that suspended the Digimon in the air. This was a far cry from Lugomon, the beast whose hellfire left it a shambling beast composed of charred bone. No, this creature bore fire the colour of the sun, a demon wolf in its ultimate form. It took a breath. All shall burn! Chapter 4, Part 3. The air smelled like pure burning exhaust. Pure fire erupted from the slits in the generators as Eiji's partner Digimon barked once more. Witness Lugomon's ultimate form. There was a bite to back up the bark. Details of the new form spilled onto the monitor before Eiji's face. Solugomon, Ultimate, Dark Beast,
virus. Everything was off the charts. Processing speed, output, there was so much potential here. I've regained some more memory, Agi. Salugomon, is that you? Yes, it is I. And with Vanagand here. Salugomon held up the massive wrench-like mace in their right hand as it stared down the two High Commandramon. I shall set everything aflame. All will be reduced to ash. All the High Commandramon heard was the high-pitched whine of the generators. Before either of them could react, a dent formed in one of their shields where Salugomon had thrust the end of their mace. The next instant, a jet of shimmering white-hot flame shot out from between the jaws of the wrench. The sheer power of the flame erupting from the jaws of the wrench seemed to howl like a wolf. Eruption howling! Vanagand's blade of concentrated flame cut through the High Commandramon shield in seconds, each swipe of the blade unleashing what sounded for all of the world like another wolf's howl. Salugomon spun the massive mace like a baton, adjusted their grip, and charged at their enemy anew. The High Commandramon shrank, and moments later, the other's shield lay in pieces. They weren't yet defeated, though. They quickly repositioned themselves and changed formation, readying their grenade launchers. They both emptied their chambers, sending 12 grenades hurtling towards Salugomon. The Digimon was engulfed in flame as the grenades found their target and exploded. The smoke from the blast cleared much faster than expected, yet there was no breeze. Salugomon quickly came back into view, the generators on its shoulders now completely open and running full tilt. The Digimon was now covered in its magical fire, a protective aura that would incinerate all it came into contact with. Unscathed, Salugomon boasted, flashing an impish grin. The High Commandramon shrank even further. Oh, come on, that's not true. You're definitely taking damage, Agi said, looking at his various tools. Quiet! We have to completely break them, or else they won't leave us alone. They're almost professionals. Salugomon's attitude wasn't any less cocky than Lugomon's. They gripped Vanagand and struck a pose to show just how unharmed they were by the grenade assault, generators spewing swirling cones of flame. The High Commandramon readied their electromagnetic batons. Open my generators all the way. They're gonna burn. They're mind-linkers too. Don't wreck their digicores. Agi wouldn't have a life to return to if he were the reason a couple of cops went DMIA. Yeah, they're tough. They're not gonna die. Salugomon took off, their generators leaving an explosive shockwave behind them as they slid along the ground and prepared to toss Vanagand. Skull Rage! The light of Lugarumon's, I think that means this, just reader's note, it says Lugarumon. I'm pretty sure that means to say Lugarmon or Lugarmon. But anyway, the light of Lugarumon's Digivolution was enough to interrupt the fight between the two legendary dragons, high above the gateway. They both covered their eyes, grunting in pain from its sheer luminance. The High Commandramon were at last brought to their knees by the mighty blow from Salugomon's mace Vanagand. They had no fight left. Yulin's hand-picked pair of mind-linkers, whom she'd trained to near perfection, had fallen to a codecracker who was making a mockery of the entire force. She looked down to see a humanoid, wolf-like Digimon she didn't recognize. And yet, there on its forehead was the old-school interface she'd come to know so well. Is that Eiji Nagasumi? She asked, doubting her own eyes. Lugomon's ultimate form. Absolutely incredible work, Eiji, Kosuke said, the battle with Yulin completely falling away in that moment. This cemented Eiji's arrival as an S-class codecracker. He had successfully mind-linked with an ultimate-level Digimon. Your fight lies with me, Yulin said, sensing Dorugoramon's focus drifting. Against all odds, she felt a strange sense of comfort and confidence. "It always was Crossroads Witch," Dorogoramon shot back, rediscovering its fury. "I never meant to slight you, you see. In the end, you and your partner Digimon are once again an essential part of the plan." "What do you mean by that?"
"Don't you see?"
Tartarus said, opening Dorogoramon's arms wide as he looked up at the networked seas above. "Data, vaccine, and virus.
3 Digimon with ultimate equivalent specs, each with the 3 key attributes,"
Kosuke said in a state of ecstasy. Yulin didn't follow. The Kosuke she knew was stoic, but slovenly, unconcerned with climbing the social hierarchy or making any sort of plans. Her mind raced. Data, vaccine, and virus? Professor Rusenji gave Eiji Nagasumi a vaccine attribute prototype Digimon. "What are you plotting, Tartarus?"
"I'm not plotting anything. Just telling the next chapter of our story. Of Operation Tartarus."
The story of their university days. The failure of the Tartarus program. Of losing Saya. The story of Kosuke, Yulin, and Professor Rusenji. There was more to be told. For Kosuke, it had never ended. Time was an endless yesterday bleeding into the present, only to repeat the next day and the day after that. White crept into his hair. Wrinkles formed on his face. The years passed, and he continued to waste them. His heart was stuck in a loop, ceaselessly pulling him back into a mythical time in which Saya never left his side. His life orbited the black hole where she used to be. Fame wasn't enough. Creating his own legends and mythos wasn't enough. Nothing could fill the yawning chasm within him. But now, at long last, a few hopeful drops fell into the empty vessel of a man. He took them gladly, whether they were drops from a sacred chalice or the blood of a living sacrifice was immaterial. True to the mantle of Tartarus he'd taken, he was prepared to accept whatever fate awaited him.
"Unlike you, I haven't turned my back on Saya,"
Kosuke said, trying to drive a dagger into Yulin's heart. Her gasp suggested that he'd succeeded.
"I don't blame you, to be fair. I know you've suffered, and that trying to forget was the only way you could move forward. That preventing further DMIA cases meant more to you than the money, which never matched your skills. Did you consider it a penance?"
"Don't you dare talk to me like you still know me."
"Oh, but I think I do know you. Better than any of the officers you trust, or Professor Rusenji himself. But have it your way. Today may well be the end of another chapter in the story of the Crossroads Witch."
A story whose principal characters, in his mind, were the code cracker Tartarus, Yulin, Saya, Professor Rusenji, and Eiji Nagasumi. Eiji was the only one with no connection to Rusenji Electronics and the original Tartarus program. He'd yet to be born, yet here he was. Kosuke had been waiting for him, for he needed all 3 prototype Digimon. "You need me. No. You need Arumon," Yulin said, a sense of dread welling up within her. Was her presence, and that of her partner Digimon, a bigger risk than anything else happening here?
"Very perceptive, Crossroads Witch. Now follow that line of logic. I can't defeat you, no matter what."
Arumon couldn't defeat Dorogoramon either. What the? Yulin felt like she was losing her mind. Arumon and Dorogoramon were perfect equals?
"You sound disappointed. I get it. You're better than everyone else and you're used to it. You've probably got higher DS levels of compatibility with your partner Digimon, and can mind link longer than me. But that's not what I mean." "I'm sick of all this talk!" Arumon roared, barely concealing their contempt. "I'm gonna put a hex on you, Crossroads Witch. I, not you, will be the one to save Saya." Dorogoramon let out an earth-shaking roar as a silver aura radiating power covered their entire body. Save Saya? How on earth would you do that? Their inability to figure out how that would even be possible was the source of all their suffering. Yulin, Kosuke, and Professor Isenji alike. By scouring the depths of the digital world, why else would we call it Operation Tartarus? Kosuke bellowed. Yulin gasped. Kosuke was in complete control of the moment. Dorumon, my partner Digimon, told me how. Way down in the depths, in a sector of old code, lies the sacred chalice. Sacred chalice? A relic of the digital world. An item of legend. And I shall be the one to find it. Come on, Dorogoromon! Kosuke shouted. Dorogoromon's aura grew thicker, dulling its silver colour. They were nothing if not driven. But there was no need to drag out this fight between two perfectly matched Mega-level Digimon. Orumon! Yulin yelled. Gairu Surajin! Gairu Urajin! Uramon intoned, readying the blades and covering themselves in a golden aura. You sure it's a good look for a cop to have such murderous intent? Kosuke goaded. Some situation necessitate the use of force, and you might as well be brandishing a gun in a shopping mall right now. Me? What have I done? I haven't so much as broken into a bank vault or tried to crash a plane. You're still a criminal. A symbol for code crackers everywhere. Yulin yelled as Orumon crossed their twin blades. Eisei Rujojin! Orumon was prepared to run the table. Like the Dragon King piece in a game of shogi, the board was theirs for the taking. They charged, flying straight to Dorogoromon with their twin blades outstretched. The swords plunged into Dorogoromon's neck, sinking deep like a dragon's fangs. Dorogoromon shrieked in pain. I, not you, will be the one to save Saya. The hex, as Kosuke had put it, replayed in Yulin's mind as she attacked. She gasped. It's like I said, Yulin, you cannot kill me. Not even if Orumon kills Dorogoromon, Kosuke said. Why? Because she was a cop? No, that wasn't it. Gah! Yulin startled, looking into Dorogoromon's eyes. If I die, you'll never save Saya. If I die, Saya will drown in sorrow. If I die, no one will be able to save Saya. Dorogoromon's eyes lit up with a fire even greater than before. They grabbed Orumon's arms and ripped the Asodirigin from their neck, keeping hold as they pushed back against Orumon with overwhelming force. The wounds in Dorogoromon's neck were shallow. Yulin's fatal blow was anything but. You were always so considerate of Saya, but you've lost Yulin. You've come all this way for her, whether you know it or not. Kosuke, like I said, I know you better than anyone. Dorogoromon delivered a fierce kick that sent Orumon reeling. This was it. There would never be a better window. Dorogoromon raised their foot in the air and launched themselves forward, turning into almost pure destructive energy as they let out a mighty roar. Brave metal! Chapter 4, Part 4. It was over in an instant. Orumon's twin blades fell to the ground. Orumon, wings broken, plunged toward the network's seas, ultimately slamming into the gateway. Its long body bounced onto the ground, where it lay unconscious. Yulin, too, was knocked out deep inside the Digicore. In an instant, Orumon regressed to its rookie state, either due to the damage it sustained or an instinctive desire to protect Yulin by extending her mind-licking time. Dorogoromon also reverted to Dorumon upon seeing Rudamon lying on the ground. The Digicore is intact, Dorumon said as Kosuke hololized himself beside his partner. I know you can't hear me, but I'm going to restrain you, Yulin, Kosuke said. He activated a piece of software that immediately restrained Rudamon. The software was identical to the one used to restrain Machinedramon on the X Nation's data server. It didn't allow anyone to control Rudamon so long as Yulin was mind-linked, but it would prevent Rudamon from moving. Kosuke breathed a slight sigh of relief. One part of the plan was complete. Apologies, Rudamon. This was the only way, Dorumon said, though they did not seem particularly remorseful. Operation Tartarus, Phase 2 complete. Dorumon, commence Phase 3, Kosuke ordered.
Copy partner, continuing Operation Tartarus. A note that mindlink uptime is higher than anticipated. Yet still within acceptable parameters. Even for a double S-class mindlinker like Tartarus, the fight with Arumon had been taxing. He's still more than enough time left to do what needed to be done. Arumon was a formidable foe, Doraemon said, looking down at the restrained Rudamon. Indeed. Sorry to put you through that a second time. Had we not been mind-linked, I wouldn't have made it, I'm sure of it, Doraemon said, not quite saying what they wanted to say. Arumon was so powerful because they were mind-linked to Yulin, but this time the very source of their strength was a liability that cost them the fight. That, so long as Yulin harboured regret in her heart, she would never be able to stop Kosuke on his relentless quest to save Saya. Are you alive, Marvin? Doraemon said over SOC leaders chat. Barely, came his reply. Looks like we've still got plenty of time. The SOC gathered to check in with one another and assess the situation before they proceeded. Arumon, the Digipolice's heavyweight, defeated and restrained. Eiji's Digivolved Salugamon put a stop to the two mind-linked High Commandramon. The Digipolice forces were down about a third of the officers that they came with. The SOC waved off a few mega-level leaders who were approaching their mind-link limits. The only ones left were Marvin, Eiji, and a select few others who held back in the first phase so they would be able to lead the rest of the crew in later phases. The initial fighting had been fierce, and they now lacked the power to strike a definitive blow against the Digipolice. The Digimon of the Wall Slums still fought with vigour, but the Codecrackers Tartarus and Eiji Insided, though their ranks continued to swell, were losing steam in the face of the fierce gatekeeper resistance. The turning point's approaching, Doraemon said gravely. The SOC couldn't risk the tide of battle shifting against them, and this was Doraemon's nudge to get them to move to the next phase. Time for the main event, Kosuke replied. Phase 3 of our story. Doraemon and Kosuke nodded at one another, their years together speaking for them. Marvin, bring Eiji over here, Doraemon barked. You got it, I'll strap a little protective charm to him and get him over to you. You guys don't need to lift a finger. You're going to use you-know-what, right? Well, of course, when, if not now. Marvin activated a tool from his suite, and a guttural, unearthly groan flooded the open chat airwaves. Satsuki was forced to make a decision as a field commander. The left-wing platoon was half destroyed, with a total loss of nearly 30% of its strength. Tactically, it is determined to be annihilated. There is no way to make up for the loss of the two High Commandramon MLs that were considered to be the main force. Nagasumi Eiji. I grit my teeth. Eiji's Nagasumi partner Digimon should have been at champion. Although it is unconfirmed information, its Digivolution into Ultimate when it confronted the hacker judge, but as a mind link, it lost control and should have failed. You achieved Ultimate in such a short period of time? Jump over the A-class and become an S-class codecracker. This means that Eiji Nagasumi has Digivolution to a level comparable to Satsuki. That put him on Satsuki's level. She should have crushed him back in the 9th District when she had the chance. Deputy Squad Leader Tamihime, came a somewhat uneasy voice over comms. Go ahead. The worst had come to pass. Tartarus's Dorogoromon defeated Squad Leader Yulin. The Digipolice had no contingency plan for this nightmarish development. They couldn't possibly lose. They had superior firepower. They'd squashed every single rebellion through sheer force until now. At least, that's how it worked in the real world. The digital world proved much different. There were no rules of engagement or laws to be followed. This was war. Left flank. Retreat and regroup with the remaining forces. Right flank and centre. Take care of the attacking gatekeepers. It was a small mercy that they were no longer under attack from the SOC. She made the call. All units commence retreat upon regrouping. But, Deputy Squad Leader, that's an order. From me and the Squad Leader. I will hear no objections. Satsuki and Yulin agreed upon 3 things prior to embarking on this mission. First, that Satsuki would take command of all Digipolice units. Second, that she would keep Numemon in their champion form and avoid engaging the enemy so she could remain mind-linked for as long as possible. Third, in the event that Yulin and Arumon fell in battle, Satsuki was to order a retreat. "The SOC's taken squad leader prisoner!" "I know! That's why there's no other choice!" Satsuki screamed, as much to convince herself as to make her orders heard. The balance of power had swung toward the SOC. Fighting any longer would result in total defeat. It went without saying that Yulin understood her deputy's desire to protect her boss at all costs. She'd gone her own way to set up the Digipolice unit inside the police, which rendered her a pariah among nearly all her superiors, but an idol to her officers. Nevertheless, they were part of the Digipolice, and the police at large. Orders were orders. "This is Tamahime. Tachibana, Sakurada, can you move?" "Apologies, Deputy Squad Leader," they said simultaneously, overcome with guilt. "Not your fault. Retreat immediately, both of you. I'll cover you." "But that's an order, not an invitation to negotiate. Get moving." She watched as they made their way aboard the Cargodramon and retreated. Then the battered left flank, as the remaining forces provided cover for the retreat. "Where'd you go, Eiji?" "Seals 1, this is Tamahime." "Copy, Tamahime. We have eyes on squad leader. Not quite sure what's happening," the Sealsramon's partner replied. "What do you mean?" "It appears Tartarus was hololized and is speaking with SOC leadership. It looks like they're ready to make their next move." "Keep watching, but retreat immediately the second things get hot." Marvin kept Eiji covered as he joined up with Tartarus and the others. He noticed Dorugoramon had reverted to Doraemon, and saw that Kosuke's hololized avatar was a dead ringer for the man himself. "Okay, I fetched and delivered the new kid. I should get going," Marvin said, watching the once again just Lugomon trot up to the others. The SOC leaders had to tap out for now. "Thanks, where are you off to?" "Gotta pick my kid up from school. Busy. Sorry to take up so much time of your day." "That's fine. I've got a good story to tell them once they're older. I can say I held my head high and put up a hell of a fight." "I'm glad you see it that way. The Digipolice retreating seems a good time as any to get out of here. I'll catch y'all later," Marvin said with a smile as his Digimon left. "Are you really retreating, Satsuki?" Eiji hololized himself and stood next to Lugomon. He looked at Cargodramon full of the Digipolice units as it began its retreat. Eiji looked back at the restrained, still unconscious Rudamon. "The police preach that a superior's orders are absolute, unlike codecrackers who make their own calls," Tartarus said, glancing down at Rudamon. "Is the Digimon okay? And their squad leader?" "It's just unconscious. The Digicore is intact. I put some restraints on it just to be safe," Tartarus said to Eiji's release. "So, what now?" Lugomon asked. Operation Tartarus was proceeding as planned. It was time for the main event, if not the final phase. "It should be obvious that the next step is to crack the gateway," Doraemon said coldly. "All right then. This time we're going to use the old interfaces on the prototype Digimon to access a backdoor to the digital world." "Prototype? Old interfaces?" Eiji chimed in, puzzled. They turned to look at one another. "What? You don't know?" Doraemon asked, taken aback. "Don't you get all high and mighty just 'cause you knew something we didn't. End your little power trip and tell me what's going on," Lugomon snapped. "I just thought you would have heard something about it from Professor Isenji," Doraemon protested, stoking Lugomon's ire. "Oh, come on," Eiji chirped as he caught Lugomon in a headlock to prevent them from charging at Doraemon. "You mean this thing on his forehead?" he said, his finger pointing at the wolf's head. Their interface matched the ones on Doraemon and Rudamon. "Precisely," Doraemon nodded. "Digimon with those interfaces are known as prototype Digimon." "So, like, they're not finalized or something? And why is my interface considered old?" Lugomon's mood turned sour, likely thinking they were being called an outdated piece of junk. "It just means it was based on an older version of the digital world. It does not necessarily imply inferiority," Doraemon calmly replied. Lugomon held their tongue. Latest doesn't always mean best, and because of their age, these old interfaces represent a massive hole in the digital world's security. A hole in the security, like the vortexes. Back doors that lead to the depths. We'll slip in where the system administrator can't see, Tartarus explained. So there are places the admin can't see? AG chirped, excited by the thought. So your old interface is old some sort of legendary power? Lugomon, you're just as incredible as I knew you were. Yeah, I know I'm incredible. What of it? Lugomon said, polishing the interface on their forehead with their front paw like a cat washing its face. Cracking the gateway requires 3 keys in the form of 3 types of prototype Digimon to be present at the same time. Data, vaccine, and virus. Doraemon cut in, continuing their explanation now that Lugomon was convinced they weren't being denigrated. The 3 rivals, eh? AG said, recalling the 3 hololized objects that floated in DDL's lobby, each with a different type written on it. I'm the data type. The restrained Rudimon here is the vaccine type, and Lugomon, you are the virus type. Got it. So, what do we have to do? AG said, eager to move things along. Now that he was an S-class codecracker, he could do anything, and he was ready to run headlong at their goal. You don't need to do anything. Sorry? AG asked blankly, the wind instantly taken out of his sails. Tartarus will handle the cracking of the gateway itself. We prototype Digimon are simply the intermediaries through which the cracking will occur. Ah, fair enough. That's why it's okay for Rudimon here to keep napping, Lugomon said, putting the pieces together. Precisely. The police would never agree to crack the gateway in the first place. Keeping them restrained allows us to use the interface, and that's all we need. That explained why defeat wasn't enough, AG supposed. Okay, so you'll need Lugomon's interface. What should I do? AG asked, feeling a bit lost. Lugomon and Doraemon exchanged a glance. Pray? Lugomon said. Yes, pray, Doraemon added. Lugomon, Doraemon, and the restrained Rudimon positioned themselves in a triangle formation with a hololized Kosuke at the center. You could have just told me about all this prototype business in the first place, you know, AG grumbled. He had too much time on his hands now. We couldn't simply gather any 3 prototype Digimon of different types and use their interfaces. They must be all capable of digivolving to their ultimate forms as well, Doraemon said. Oh, I see. So you're waiting for Solugomon to show up? Yes. Absent that digivolution, this would not have worked. That explained the how, but not the why. Why could only Digimon capable of digivolving to ultimate work? There were theories that long ago, Digimon in the digital world could only digivolve as far as their ultimate forms. Perhaps that was it, and Doraemon and Rudimon's prototypical nature allowed them to push past the limit to reach the mega level. Commencing Operation Tartarus, Phase 3, Kosuke announced. There is no cancelling the process once we begin. Doraemon and Lugomon will see their attack power drop to 0 until the gateway is cracked. We're counting on you, the rest of SOC, to see us through. That means you, Marvin. Counting on you, Songsmith. Got you covered, Doraemon. AG, keep our leader safe. A low rumble emerged from the gateway as a new Digimon joined the fray. The SOC members closed ranks around the leadership in order to shield them from the gigantic machine-type threat. Is that Machinedramon? The outline of the Digimon stirred faint memories of the attack on the X-Nation server, but Machinedramon was destroyed, wasn't it? No, it just looks similar. You've seen it before, Lugomon? The red armor, that has to be Chaosdramon, Mega Machine Virus. The colossal machine-type Digimon resembled a bipedal, carnivorous dinosaur. It ran a more autonomous version of Machinedramon's programming, tuned for maximum destruction. Most of its body was comprised of red Digizoid, a rare digital world metal created by twice refining chrome Digizoid and turning it the colour of blood. It repels most any attack, and Chaosdramon itself is designed to destroy any and all targets. Its special move fires twin Dreadnought class energy from both its shoulder cannon in a move called Hyper Infinity Cannon! Twin beams of blood red energy shot through the sky. unleashing pure destruction upon the gatekeepers. The explosions continued to tear through their tightly formed ranks. It was as though all the stars in the sky exploded and scattered further out into the vacuum of space. A mega-level Chaosdramon. So this is what the SOC was after when they were collecting state-secret Digimon? But who on earth is mind-linked to it? Eiji said, stunned. This one's a bot, Marvin said over chat from his mind-linked Airdramon. A bot? Wait, don't tell me you're controlling it. Yup, this one's too volatile. Nobody could possibly mind. Whoop! Marvin cut himself short as Chaosdramon let out a roar. That was enough to send the remaining Digimon from the war slum scattering like so many prey escaping a predator. This Digimon was not to be trifled with, and it was loaded with an AI attack routine that was neither friend nor foe. Marvin struggled to control it himself. Good as time as any, Lugumon muttered under their breath as they watched the other Digimon flee. What about the Digimon in the 9th district? Eiji asked. I told them to run the second anything looked dicey. Don't worry, Digimon in the war slum don't do anything that doesn't benefit him personally, Lugumon said with a knowing smile. Chaosdramon's a machine type. It's responsive to software tools. Just like the android type, so long as I keep an eye on it and feed it commands as needed, we'll be fine. Marvin used his software to pilot Chaosdramon toward the center of the gateway area, ensuring it would be a convenient target for any remaining enemies in the area. The red Digizoid would make a mockery of any enemy foolish enough to strike it. A single Digimon changed the complexion of the entire battlefield in an instant. We've got until you-know-who shows up, Tartarus, Marvin said, using a favoured euphemism. Don't take all day. Sorry, Marvin, let's go, Eiji, Kosuke barked before turning to Rudamon. Sorry, Yulin. I just need to borrow your consciousness and Digicore. This was no longer an experiment. It was the first and last chance he held. They were going to crack the gateway, and hopefully before there became so much rust on the ultimate gatekeeper's blade. With any luck, you-know-who wouldn't even show up. Everyone began their own mental countdown. Satisfied that everyone had their partner's backs covered, Kosuke opened a virtual monitor and entered a command. Crack Gateway. Chapter 4, Part 5. The gatekeepers wasted no time concentrating their firepower on the SOC. Marvin's Chaosdramon, or, as it was known to some, the Tyrant, held them at bay. The other SOC leaders, meanwhile, cleaned up any stray gatekeepers that managed to sneak past the repeated blast of Chaosdramon's hyper-infinity cannon. For a miraculous handful of minutes, they established a perimeter and gave Tartarus time to work. It was a welcome break from the chaos that preceded it, but it also laid bare the great cost of humanity clawing at the entrance to the depths. Kosuke chose to focus his attention on the 3 prototype Digimon, who were busy cracking open the gateway. He remained hololized beside them, ready to bare his entire existence to the digital world. It was what his pride demanded, and also the least he could do in light of the sacrifices of the SOC members and their partner Digimon in advancing the cause. He watched the gate-cracking progress bar crawl forward. 30%, 33%, Doraemon called out, announcing the progress of the gate cracking. Complex code flew across Kosuke's virtual monitor, sending various commands to the 3 prototype Digimon. He felt like a sorcerer manipulating his subject through a digitized talisman. The code on the screen certainly looked like an incantation or hex of some sort. Tens of thousands of lines of it streamed across the screen, breaking free of the virtual monitor's border and twisting in the air until they were sucked into the various interfaces on the prototype Digimon. Their legs began to glow as the code filtered in, revealing a pattern of light in the ground below that crept out over the gateway, carving a complex geometric pattern onto the surface. The last time Kosuke attempted to crack open the gateway by himself, Doraemon's ultimate form made it to 30% and stalled. They had surpassed that figure now, and were closer than ever to setting foot in the untouched depths. The gatekeeper forces, tens of thousands of AI programs, had their sights set on him. Pieces of destroyed gatekeepers occasionally flew past him, but he didn't so much as flinch. Eiji studied Kosuke carefully, moved by his singular focus. Eiji opened a monitor of his own to check in on the progress. Not that he could understand everything the legendary codecracker was doing. 66%, Doraemon intoned. The gateway groaned as the geometric pattern ate into it. They were 2/3 of the way there. Lugumon flicked their nose ever so slightly into the air. "What is it, Lugumon?" "It's coming," Lugumon said with a hint of fear. Lugumon must have gotten a whiff of whatever was emerging from the depths. "It? No. You don't mean—" "Hey, Tartarus!" Eiji called out. He couldn't glean any further info from his virtual monitor, which was more or less in standby mode now that Lugumon was devoting most of their AI functions to the gate cracking. "Stay calm, Lugumon," Doraemon said softly. "There's nothing we can do about that right now." Lugumon grunted in frustration. "That said, I trust your nose, Marvin," Doraemon called out, its voice far more robotic and mechanical now that most of its processing cycles were dedicated to cracking the gate. "I hear you! That's it! Everyone fall back!" Marvin barked to the others. "Tapping out, sir! That's it for me too!" The other SOC leaders chimed in, letting Tartarus know one by one that they had hit their mind-link limits. It fell to Chaosdramon to hold the line. "Marvin, team leader, let's all raise a glass on Grim when this is over," one of the leaders said over chat as the last of the leadership made their exit. "You got it! Alright, logging— ah!" The chat went quiet. The scream sent Eiji's mind racing. Had they been attacked? No sooner had the thought crossed his mind than a Digimon dropped out of the sky, landing with a sickening thud against the gateway. Eiji frantically searched for the source of a flash of light he caught out of the corner of his eye. He saw just one Digimon approaching their position. It had taken severe damage. Its metallic arms and legs were covered in gashes that belched smoke out into the air with each and every move. "Mechanorimon?" Eiji said in disbelief. The Digipolice mechanized Digimon must have shot one of the SOC's Digimon out of the sky with the beam cannon housed in its torso. "I thought the Digipolice retreated!" A series of small explosions erupted throughout Mechanorimon's body. It lurched to one side and toppled over. It was in dire straits, either from scraps with the SOC, gatekeepers, or both. The hatch on its head opened, and a Digimon descended. No, spilled out of the chair within. Numemon. The slug itself was plenty damaged. It flopped to the ground as if trying to escape the Mechanorimon more than anything. Satsuki hololized herself beside it. "Sorry about that," Satsuki said, hanging her head as she placed her hand on the immobilized Mechanorimon. "You're the deputy squad leader of the Digipolice! What do you think you're doing?" Marvin bellowed, furious that she'd managed to shoot one of her comrades out of the sky. She didn't even have any of her Commandramon with her. "What am I doing?" Satsuki repeated, turning to fix the mighty Chaosdramon with a fearsome glare. Marvin felt himself recoil at the force of her gaze. "I'm getting any squad leader out of here, you filthy codecracker!" she barked. "Admirable, but what were you hoping to accomplish with a single Numemon?" Marvin shouted, trying to deter Satsuki from escalating the situation. Chaosdramon had its hands full holding the gatekeepers at bay, but Numemon was within range of the massive demolition claw on its right arm. It would take a single snap to obliterate the slug for good. "Wow, I didn't know you were gonna bring Chaosdramon out. Who knew a Digimon could look so brutal and so grotesque? Nice work, Songsmith!" "Hey, Satsuki!" Eiji said as he leapt into the fray. Eiji Nagasumi? Satsuki scowled even harder. Her life had been nothing but a series of setbacks ever since Eiji entered the picture. He was pestilence incarnate. She would have someone exorcise the little demon if she could. It's too dangerous to stay hololized. All it takes is one stray bullet and you're a goner. Don't you freaking start. I know exactly how dangerous it is, and I'm prepared to deal with the consequences. She'd suffer the same fate if she were in Numamon's core and had happened to suffer catastrophic damage anyhow. It's about to get a lot worse. Something real bad's coming. Shut it, puppy trainer, she snapped and produced something from her pocket. Is that a Digimon dock? The pouch from which she produced the device looked like some sort of ready-to-eat military ration. It had a crudely printed label on it that read, Classified, Metropolitan Police Department Unit 11, D003799. Metropolitan Police Department Classified? Marvin's sharp Airdramon-assisted eyes got a good enough look at the label. Apologies, squad leader. I just sent the higher-ups my resignation, Satsuki said as she looked at the unconscious Rudamon inside whom Yulin was trapped. Satsuki? Eiji stammered. Once I unleash the state-secret Digimon, I'll be no different from the criminals in the SOC. But it doesn't matter. The Digipolice can't afford to lose you, Satsuki yelled as she turned on the precinct Digimon dock. The wind carried a horrific, metallic scream. There was a new Digimon in play, which put Eiji high alert, but nothing appeared. What have you done, Satsuki? Up there! Marvin's Airdramon shouted. Genocidal rain! A hail of bullets rained down from a Gatling gun high above. Chaosdramon, no way! Marvin yelped in disbelief. The fearsome Digimon slouched forward, unmoving. It would weather the torrent of bullets just fine, but the sheer force of the attack pinned it down. I'm coming to save you, squad leader, Satsuki cried. She's after Rudamon, Marvin said. Pinning Chaosdramon down was a convenient distraction. Eiji crouched down and covered his head as best he could amid a fresh volley. His senses were overwhelmed between the roar of the Gatling gun, the vibrations as each heavy slug hit the ground, and the clouds of scorched dust they kicked up. He slowly, carefully lifted his head. Chaosdramon! Eiji shouted, looking up at the back of the massive Digimon that had stepped in between him and certain death. They were protecting Eiji, and, more importantly, Kosuke. But their assailant was a Digimon Eiji hadn't seen before. Brigadramon, Mega, Android, Virus. The Digipolice just had a Mega-level Digimon sitting around? Eiji said, aghast. It looked like a robotic humanoid soldier, as best Eiji could tell, but it could also fly. It specialized in aerial attacks with its Gatling gun, but the jet engines attached to its back could easily propel it across land at high speeds if need be. Its primary weapon was its right arm, a long 4-barrel Gatling gun. Its head looked like an airplane cockpit with a special coating, but complex circuitry filled the space where a seat would otherwise be. The Digimon wasn't meant to be piloted like Mechanorimon, but rather operated as a tool. It typically took 2 to operate as well, a pilot and someone to interface with control. Yet there was Satsuki, fulfilling both duties with ease. Hey, what is this Dramon? It's a classified Digimon from the Metropolitan Police Department that even Marvin didn't know about. Damn, you stupid red Digizoid! Is that a foul? Satsuki curses. Its defense power is an outlier, such as Digimon that can withstand being hit by 4,800 rounds of genocide rain per second. Surprisingly, both Satsuki and Marvin were able to use Mega by manipulating tools. Although the specs are clearly inferior to the mind-linked Mega, considering the limited operating time, the overall performance of using such tools is likely to be better in many cases. Who's at fault, Shrew? But I caught him. Marvin smiles. Chaosdramon's crusher was grabbing Dramon's right arm's Gatling gun. I got caught. It was on purpose. Dramon raised his hand opposite, the one that was being grabbed towards Chaosdramon. Brigidramon lifted its left hand and pointed the 3 organic missile launchers housed in its claws directly at Chaosdramon. You figured a gun that long had to leave Brigidramon helpless in close quarters, didn't you? Well, he's ready for anything, thanks to the department's top flight engineering. Stop it, both of you! AG yelled. It's here! The gatekeeper parts that littered the networked seas slowly disappeared from view, as if washed out by a receding tide, or an air bubble from below. It was nearly here. The one creature Digimon in the wall slum were loath to call by name, rising from the depths to protect its territory at all costs. Delete all. The top gatekeeper who attacked Eiji and Halugamon on the floating island and fell to the bottom of the turbulent whirlpool along with Leon and Kazuchimon. Don't say anything. Just do it. Just eliminate it. Those who challenge the deep layer of the digital world. No communication is possible. And now, reader's note, there's just a bunch of, combined text. I'm guessing it's a bad translation job or a bug, so I'm going to do my best to kind of read it. Among Mega who are highly closest to being called a god, a system administrator. When faced with an armed angels of this digital world, Cracker, there is only one thing to do, even if it's against the digital world. There was only one option for anyone, be they a code cracker or an officer of the Digipolice themselves. Confronted with the Digimon, run, and pray you weren't rendered DMIA. This time, however, Omegamon would come face to face with a cadre of the finest mind-linkers ever known. A handful attempting to crack open the gateway, and one fighting to rescue her dear friend and colleague at the edge of the digital world. No one in this crew would be scared off quite so easily. In fact, it only strengthened their resolve and made what they had to do all the more clear. They steeled themselves for what was to come. His right arm is an absolute zero cannon. There should be no warning. Omegamon manifests at the wall gate and fires the Garuru cannon. The aim is the person who is performing the gate cracking fraudulent data from the real world. Tartarus! Marvin discarded Chaosdramon and used it as Red Digizoid's shield. The metal body that was hit by the Garuru cannon is freezing. Even the Red Digizoid, boasting its hardness, cannot block the cold air itself. Hyper Infinity Cannon! Chaosdramon let out one final, defiant roar as it readied its weapon. Omegamon preemptively jumped into the air, stabilized itself with its onboard altitude control once it was clear of Chaosdramon's head, and took aim at Kosuke and the other prototype Digimon. Exodestroyer! Satsuki's Brigadramon launched all 3 of its guided organic missiles from its left arm, each one slamming into Omegamon from the side. The blasts were enough to knock the Royal Knight off course and force it to land atop the gateway to regroup, but nowhere near strong enough to pierce its armour, let alone defeat it. Genocidal Rain! Brigadramon followed the missile attack with a barrage from its Gatling gun. Satsuki didn't fully understand why she was assisting in the fight against Omegamon. She had no reason to help these criminal codecrackers, but it was clear that the Royal Knight was after Tartarus, and Rudamon stood a decent chance of becoming collateral damage. She had to fight to keep Yulin safe. Rat-a-tat-tat, clank, whizzz. Brigadramon's Gatling gun stopped firing and slowly ground to a halt. It was overheated. Wisps of smoke rose from the ends of the barrels. Satsuki wouldn't be able to fire again until they were cool. Omegamon, meanwhile, emerged unscathed as the smoke cleared. It calmly lifted its left arm. Transcendent Sword! 95%, 96%, 97%. Doraemon's robotic voice announced. Omegamon readied its Transcendent Sword and charged. Chaosdramon was frozen solid. Brigadramon had exhausted its ammunition. They weren't going to make it. The Royal Knight was going to kill Tartarus. Kosuke! Eiji cried out. All he could do was pray now. Everyone could communicate with their Digimon at the speed of light. Yet, here they all were collectively holding their breath. It was then that Kosuke finally made a move. He revealed 2 Digimon docks, one in each hand. They weren't Digimon linkers, but they were synced in advance to 2 more Digimon. I told you I was collecting classified Digimon, didn't I? Kosuke said, revealing 2 more Mega-level Digimon. By which you mean you have 2 or 3, each on the same level as Machinedramon or Chaosdramon. Gateway 99% cracked, by the way, Doraemon said, as the 2 Mega-level Digimon emerged from their docks just in time to receive the slash from Omegamon's Transcendent Sword. Kosuke's miraculous timing gave the humans a new lease on life, and a hope that they might find their way out of this. Ghostly projections rose up from each of the 3 prototype Digimon. Doraemons in the form of Dorogreymon, Rudimons in the form of Hisarumon, and Lugamons in the form of Solugamon. These projections settled back down around each Digimon, wrapping around them as massive amounts of code began to shoot out from their bodies. The gateway let out another massive groan. The massive, multi-layered geometric pattern the 3 prototype Digimon created, the Tripate key, sank a bit further, and locked into place. The back door was finally open. The Mega-level Digimon Kosuke had unleashed were torn asunder by Omegamon's blade, now an inch from finding its way into Kosuke's windpipe. 100%. Gate cracking complete, Doraemon announced as Kosuke, Eiji, and the 3 prototype Digimon all vanished from sight. Chapter 4, Part 6. Omegamon slashed through the 2 Digimon in its way, clearing the path to its human target. It thrust its transcendent sword towards Kosuke Kizukata's neck, expecting the soft resistance of hololized flesh, but finding only more air. It all happened too fast for Marvin the Songsmith to process. One instant, Tartarus's hololized form was there, and the next it was gone. Eiji, the Digipolice squad leader, and the 3 prototype Digimon vanished as well. Did they just get transported? Did they just crack the gateway? He wondered aloud, raising his fists in celebration within Airdramon's Digicore. What happened? Where is Rudimon? Where is the squad leader? Satsuki said in a daze. Had she truly been sent into the depths? If she had, then perhaps she'd avoided instant death at the hands of the Royal Knight, which was a silver lining. Omegamon gathered itself, pulling its extended back foot in toward its body, and drawing its sword up to inspect it for any sign that it struck a target. The blade was clean. Omegamon let out a powerful sigh of lament. The lone knight entrusted with keeping humans out of the Royal Knight's sacred realm allowed 3 of them to infiltrate the depths. A cruel fate for a cruel angel. If Omegamon turned around and targeted Marvin or Satsuki, they and their Digimon would both be dead. The deputy and the songsmith scanned the battlefield, taking in the remembrances Tartarus left in his wake. The 2 Mega-level Digimon he sacrificed, the half-frozen Chaosdramon, the overheated Brigadamon, each one, used properly as a shield or distraction, gave them at best a 50-50 shot at escaping, if that. This was a Royal Knight after all. It represented some of the most finely tuned AI among the Mega-level Digimon. Was it so honed as to lack emotion, though? Despite its earlier sigh, it showed no fury, in accordance with the laws of nature in the digital world. It, instead, leapt into the air, twisted its body at a strange angle, and dove headlong into the gateway, out of sight. The battlefield fell silent. The mangled corpses of thousands of gatekeepers littered the top of the gateway. The denizens of the wall slum fled the moment they caught sight of Royal Knight. Countless codecracker Digimon also lay among the wreckage. The big, net-wide festival was over. Marvin hololized himself. Thanks for the assist, he said to Satsuki, who sat beside the wrecked Mechanorimon. Where is Rudimon? Where is my squad leader? Satsuki asked wearily, hanging her head. Hey now, if we keep bickering, we're gonna be in some real trouble, Marvin said, holding his hands up near his head. I asked you where my squad leader is, you criminal! So that's how it is. Look, I lost friends too, Marvin offered, scratching his head. He looked at the SOC leader's Digimon that Mechanorimon shot down before, glancing at his virtual monitor. They were sending out a distress signal. Do not mention the squad leader in the same breath as those disgusting codecrackers! Wow, the Japanese police, everybody. Listen, my fight's done. It's time for love and peace and all that. Now, if you'll excuse me, I've got my own crap to take care of. I'm gonna help the friends that you shot down and clean up these mega-level Digimon. I'll be seeing you, Deputy Squad Leader. Marvin said this as he activated his collection tool. The tool gathered the half-frozen Chaosdramon and the 2 mega-level sacrifices Tartarus left behind into a Digimon dock, while Marvin focused on helping his fallen comrades. He turned back to Satsuki once he finished. Okay, I'm gonna head back to our Wolfslum base now. Later. Ugh. Satsuki couldn't help but react, and turned slightly toward Marvin as he walked away. Sorry, didn't mean to be rude. Feel free to join me if you're about to cross the line. I could probably fix up your Mechanorimon. Chaos is the cradle that shelters all digital life and its infinite possibilities. How far had they come? How long had they been here? How could they both see for miles and not see anything at all? They were taking it all in, yet had no sense of this place or their place in it. Kosuke, Eiji, and the still restrained Yulin stood in a void beyond the gateway, with the prototype Digimon who helped them get there. Are we in the depths? Eiji said this, looking around for something to fix his gaze upon and coming up empty. It was all so formless and blindingly bright, save for the floor beneath their feet. A level surface, and we can hololize, which means there is 3-dimensional rendering power here. Everything's a bit more straightforward than I imagined it would be, Kosuke said. I always pictured the depths as some sort of wild place full of untouched nature, like a rainforest or something, Eiji said, hololizing himself into the void. That's what the videos in the DDL lobby suggested it would be like, anyway. We Digimon have no particular affinity for the abundance of nature you find in the real world. We're not humans, after all. Right, Lugumon? Doraemon asked. Speak for yourself. I was raised in the Wolfslum, and my memory is hazy at best, Lugumon shot back. They clearly didn't share Eiji's unease at being in a seemingly infinite void. He took Doraemon's point, though. Eiji grew up in the city, so nature was somewhat foreign to him as well. Something he only experienced on camping trips or some other planned outdoor activity. Even the footage of rural towns and farming communities meant to evoke nostalgia in other people. They didn't really connect with him. His grandparents all lived on the outskirts of Tokyo. Kosuke got right back to work on his virtual monitor. It was impossible to tell what was going on in his mind, but he was clearly energized now that they'd cracked the gateway. The digital world was his life, and had been ever since he was in college. He'd been at this longer than Eiji had been alive. Eiji wasn't about to lie and say he understood what all this meant for Kosuke. Nevertheless, they shared a common goal. Rescuing someone close to them who had gone DMIA. They had to find Leon and Saya. So, what is this place? Lugumon sniffed, raising their nose into the air. There's a bunch of scents in the air that don't really add up to anything. There's something here, but there isn't. It's like we're in a giant's belly. A giant? Eiji asked, voice slightly trembling with uncertainty. Yeah, if you think of hell as a giant, it eats anything and everything eventually, Lugumon replied. But they were in the depths, weren't they? That's where they were supposed to go after they cracked the gateway. Then again, the vast nothingness, but for the brightness, did make him feel like he was trapped in some sort of monster slumbering in the depths. Oh, nice one, Lugumon. I didn't know you had a fit flair for the poetic, Doraemon cracked. Shut it, Lugumon snarled, baring their teeth. This is the source domain, Kosuke announced. He marvelled at the fact that he likely wouldn't be here had it not been for Doraemon's suggestion that he crack the gate, and the steady stream of information the Digimon helpfully provided along the way on how to do it. The source, eh? So, this is where it all started? Eiji asked, trying to get a jump on the story. The digital world was born of noise and chaos, from information without context. This is a place full of ancient data, now long forgotten, known as the source domain. Ancient? Only old Digimon can access it. That, or Digimon that are compatible with older standards, such as... Kosuke trailed off. Such as us prototypes, Doraemon said, showing off their interface. They turned to look at Rudamon. Ah! Eiji chirped with a start. He saw Rudamon's eyes open ever so slightly. They weren't fully conscious yet, nor could they move on account of the restraints, but they were coming around. Our old interfaces granted us access, and since you're all fused to our digicores, you got to come along for the ride. There, now you're all caught up, Deputy Squad Leader. Yulin wholeized herself. She was indeed the same tall woman Eiji passed leaving DDL not that long ago. Kosuke! She shouted as she strode up to him, fire in her eyes. She would have punched him if she could. Apologies, Yulin, but this was the only way. You wouldn't have helped me no matter how nicely I asked. Wait, the gateway, what happened? She demanded, as the confusion set in. She'd been unconscious ever since her fight against Dorogoramon, unaware that they had successfully entered the gateway. We cracked it. This is what lies on the other side. Yulin's words caught in her throat. An unprecedented criminal act had taken place as a direct result of her blunder. Orumon bested Dorogoramon. The mission failed because she hesitated. She'd proven unable to counteract the almost gravitational pull between Kosuke and Saya. The Digipolice watched Orumon fall and withdrew. Your deputy, however, fought to the last. She even deployed a Mega-level Digimon to try to rescue you and Rudamon. Satsuki, no! She deployed Brigadramon? Yulin's blood ran cold at the thought of Satsuki deploying a top-secret Digimon. No one could fully control it. It wasn't meant to be deployed in combat scenarios. I wasn't aware you were sitting on a new type of Digimon. It went toe-to-toe with Marvin's Chaosdramon, but then that Royal Knight Digimon showed up and, well, it was a real party then. Omegamon's sword was just about to pierce Tartarus's throat, and... Doraemon rattled on, gesturing at their neck with their front leg. But he managed to release 2 of the top-secret Digimon the SOC collected? They absorbed the blow from the Royal Knight, which was supposed to give the other leaders enough time to escape, wasn't it? Kosuke asked Doraemon rhetorically, a pained grin spreading across his face. Brigadramon's appearance caught them off guard. The SOC left it to chance in the end. Kosuke, what happened to Satsuki? She's not my responsibility. The digital world was a battlefield for codecrackers and the Digipolice alike, and Kosuke used that shared viewpoint to his advantage. His response would put a stop to her questions, if nothing else. I don't know what happened after we cracked the gateway, but I know my second command is a gentleman, so I trust he's treating her well. We've seen enough people go DMIA. Hang on, you two know each other? Eiji interjected. This was not how he'd seen any conversation between a cop and a criminal play out. How else would Yulin, the Digipolice's top brass, know Tartarus's real name, let alone be on a first-name basis with him? He heard they had a past, but not one this deep. There's no use hiding anything, seeing as we're in the source domain. Where else can everything be laid bare if not here? Kosuke said. He gave a brief history of their time as Professor Isenji's students, working side by side in his lab. Eiji knew the head of the Digipolice had been a student of the professor's, but it was quite the revelation that both of them were founding members of the venture that became Abaddon Electronics. Wow, so... Tartarus? Eiji said uneasily. Yes, Eiji? Sorry to cut all this short, but isn't that Royal Knight gonna come after us? About that, Doraemon began. Only prototype Digimon can access the source domain. The Royal Knights are not permitted to enter. Oh, they don't have the credentials? Phew. That's a relief, Eiji said, his shoulders dropping as relief came over him. The source domain is also outside the system administrator's purview, so it's not even in the index of domains the Royal Knights are sworn to protect. This is something of a lost world, if you will. One that's still very much part of the digital world, but different. Huh, okay. Theoretically, anyway. This is all my own conjecture. What? Please tell me you're joking, AG yelled. I mean, worst case scenario, I'm wrong. The royal knight that was after us shows up, and we all meet an unfortunate end. The end. Now, I'm not picking up any hint of that rust bucket in the air, Lugomon said, sniffing rhythmically. This domain holds what we, the SOC, seek. The sacred chalice. There should be an ancient and forgotten temple of sorts here. Perhaps behind some ancient administrative privileges. Every single thing you say about this place makes my fur stand on end. In a good way. The source domain place is wild, Lugomon said, looking all around. There wasn't much to see. It was a completely white, formless space. Just because they couldn't see anything didn't mean there was nothing to see, however. At minimum, there was a floor, and they hadn't been deleted out of existence yet, which was nice. So, what? Some sort of console or debug mode for the digital world? AG said instinctively. Probably not, but you may not be far off, Doraemon said absent-mindedly. Very helpful. What's up, Lugomon? AG asked, turning toward the distracted Digimon. Something stinks over here. But what? Gah! Lugomon barked as the area they'd been sniffing suddenly reacted, shifting and reconfiguring the space before them. Where once there was nothing, something began to emerge and take shape. What did you do, Lugomon? AG yelped, visibly flinching. Was all Lugomon could get out as they bent over backwards, stunned stiff. Chapter 4, Part 7. What is it? Lugomon asked, heart racing as they slowly backed away. The object that appeared before them defied description. Well, you activated it, didn't you? AG retorted. Doesn't mean I know what it is. Scared the heck out of me. So you are terrified of some things. AG was delirious with adrenaline. Oh, like it didn't scare you at all? I mean, we're in the digital world. Weird stuff is gonna happen, AG said, scratching the back of his head and trying to remain calm. The strange sights of the war slum had primed AG to expect the unexpected, to a certain extent. Wow, so AG's the more adaptable one? I mean, that's not strictly true just because I'm observing it now, but it's not true just because I haven't witnessed it before, Doraemon mused. If you want to chase logic in circles, do it in your head. It scared me, okay? End of story. Everyone fell silent, and Lugomon looked at the object for a moment. You know, I think, come to think of it, I've seen this thing somewhere before. You're just saying that, aren't you? AG asked pointedly, eyes fixed on the object. His eyes slowly focused on something carved in the spherical object. The 3 types! Yulin blurted out. Oh yeah, just like in the DDL lobby, AG added, recalling the 3 hololized objects he'd seen so many times before. The types that formed the basis of Digimon taxonomy: virus, data, and vaccine. One of the objects moved toward Lugomon. That would be the virus attribute, for Lugomon, Doraemon explained as the data object moved over Doraemon's head, and the vaccine object moved over the still prone Rudamon. The mere presence of the prototype Digimon in the source domain must have triggered a response in the objects. They are terminals, and we prototype Digimon are the interfaces. Welcome, Tartarus, to the fortress containing the sacred chalice. It's been quite the journey, Doraemon, Kosuke said. Indeed, but we shouldn't celebrate until we have truly succeeded, Doraemon replied as they nodded at one another. Gateway cracked. Source domain entered. Phase 3 complete. Commencing Phase 4 of Operation Tartarus, Kosuke said as he took a step forward. We're so close, Kosuke. Now to try and access the source code. You still have plenty of mind-linking time left, right? Kosuke said, turning to look at Eiji. You know it, Eiji said, putting his hand on Lugomon's back. Doraemon gently swished their tail through the air. The source domain, Yulin said softly, trying to process what was happening. She had the skills, but never went this deep into the hacking world. I doubt you would have heard of this place, Yulin, Kosuke said. This is the realization of every expedition and piece of research the professor conducted since the discovery of the digital world. But now it's no longer theoretical. I can finally save Saya. Saya, Kosuke's long-lost mind-linker partner tied to a black Agumon, Eiji recalled. The woman whose body was now suspended in liquid in a capsule far, far away. He figured Yulin would be able to understand Kosuke's desire to save the woman who went DMIA as a result of the Tartarus program's failures. What he hadn't properly accounted for were the completely different roads they'd taken after the accident. Kosuke became a codecracker, while Yulin went all in on the Digipolice. Nevertheless, the leader of the aggressive SOC faction and the Digipolice squad leader once again found themselves joined together as a result of the path that they had chosen, or felt they had no choice but to follow. They'd carried the loss of Saya with them all their lives, filling the hole that she left by throwing themselves into their work, honing the skills they needed to survive to an exceedingly fine point. And, in the end, Kosuke and Doremon emerged victorious. Perhaps that meant Professor Isenji had as well. Eiji reckoned the professor was also looking for. She was a former student of his as well, which would explain why he'd given Kosuke the syringe full of medicine. The pieces fit. Eiji kept connecting the dots. His installation into the SOC as a spy might have been a long play in the hopes that Lugumon would digivolve to their ultimate form and help crack the gateway. He had to imagine that bet paid off faster than even the professor himself expected. Eiji felt the full weight of Kosuke saying he trusted Professor Isenji, and of his own place in the grand tale of humanity's foray into the digital world. He wasn't kidding, Yulin said, glancing in Eiji's direction. This old domain is a massive security hole. Very perceptive, Crossroads Witch, Doremon said. I know what you two want, Yulin shouted, grabbing one of Rudemon's clawed paws in an attempt to arouse it to its feet. You want to crack the code of the digital world itself. That's right. We'll circumvent the Royal Knights, slip past the system administrator, and take control. You'll put a target on your back. It's too dangerous, Yulin said, pressing her case. I have no delusion of ruling the digital world in perpetuity. I need control for but a moment over a small piece. It's too risky. If you subject the source domain to the whims of humans and Digimons alike, there are no mere whims, Doremon said, taking umbrage with Yulin's framing. This is only to save Saya. Nothing more, Kosuke said, unmoved. It doesn't matter. We shouldn't be here. We can't risk destroying the fragile connection between humanity and the digital world. Do you really think we understand Digimon and the digital world well enough to be messing with this place? Yulin's words echoed throughout the source domain. They hung in the air, calling attention to what was at stake. Their own lives. In the beginning, there was chaos, from which emerged reason and language. Perhaps that was how the digital world began. Then, little by little, emotion added colour. A beautiful noise. This is for Saya. Those simple words summarised half of Kosuke's life. Eiji felt the deep, deep connection and affection Kosuke shared with Saya. Deeper than most people share with their colleagues, to be sure. But she was the only person the legendary codecracker Tartarus ever lost mid-mission. That had haunted him ever since. But there was something else too. Something beyond even that. Eiji had never felt such a deep and abiding love and commitment for another person. But he knew what it felt like to have the mere thought of someone make you want to give your life in return for theirs. If this brings Saya, Kosuke started. If this brings the Professor's daughters back, it will be worth it. The Professor's daughter? Eiji said softly, trying to make sure he heard correctly. Our lost colleague was Saya Risenji, the Professor's daughter, and my fiancé. Kosuke's fiancé? His lover? Eiji struggled to picture it. Not that it mattered if he understood. If there was someone he cared for just as much, he would suffer any injury to get them back. And that was what Saya meant to Kosuke. He'd worked tirelessly in pursuit of getting her back. So, Lugumon interjected. Yes, Lugumon, Doraemon said. I just want to tell you, Doraemon, Old Man Tartarus and Lady Squad Leader here, that Eiji and I don't give a crap what you're all here for, Lugumon said gruffly, staring at the virus attribute object floating overhead. The void fell silent. We're on a mission to save our friend Pulsemon and their human partner Leon. We're not interested in anything else. That was the deal. So move it along, Codecracker, Lugumon fumed. Eiji could tell this outburst was a long time coming. Are you willing to take responsibility for it then? Yulin asked defiantly. Is that what that means? We humans shouldn't be messing with the digital world any more than we already have? There are some places humanity isn't meant to tread, Eiji Nagasumi, she bellowed. You hear that? Lugumon said coyly. Sure didn't, Eiji replied. Yulin gritted her teeth. Look, I hear you loud and clear, Squad Leader. Or at least I'm trying to hear you out. But we didn't come all this way just to turn around without helping our lost friends. We tagged along so we could find them, and we're so close, Eiji explained. We're not stopping until we find him, if that's what you're trying to say, Lugumon interjected, still irritated. What the wolf said. The three objects began floating around one another, overlapping in space before stretching out like the diagram for some molecule or other. The next instant they collapsed into a single entity. A massive foundation slowly rose out of the ground, forming a stage of some sort. Elsewhere, massive blocks then rose into the air above, despite there being no visible seams or cuts in what constituted the floor beneath them. The blocks began to stack themselves before everyone's eyes. They're huge, Eiji squeaked. Blocks of several meters turned up to serve as pillars, with another block laid across each set of pillars to form a crude roof. Each makeshift stone gate then placed itself to the ground until they formed a loose circle around Eiji and the others, like a massive version of Stonehenge. They look like ruins, with an altar in the middle, Eiji said to himself. How big are these going to get, though? Kosuke kept his cool, which Eiji took as a sign he shouldn't panic either. Maybe these blocks weren't significant at all. The henge kept growing, however, 2 levels, then 3, all of it towering over them to an absurd degree. Eiji couldn't shake the feeling that it was meant to look like an ancient outdoor amphitheatre or arena. The ground had now been hollowed out into a bowl shape. On the stage at its centre stood the 3 prototype Digimon and their hololized companions, surrounded by the towering stone circle. Got pretty cold here all of a sudden, Lugumon said through a shiver. The air inside the stone circle was indeed much colder now. Eiji hugged his shoulders to keep warm. Can't you shoot out a little fire, help us stay warm? He asked Lugumon. Do I look like a bonfire to you? Lugumon's inextinguishable flame would have been a great help, but they were in no mood to be ordered around. The stones finished their shuffling. The 3 prototype Digimon stood before the altar at the centre of the stone circle. Commencing Phase 4, Source Data Access. When you're ready, Lugumon, Doraemon said, turning to the wolf. The prototype Digimon were once again called upon to interface with the digital world. Lugumon took a step forward the floating objects. Doraemon took hold of the restraints around Rudamon and dragged it along. The half-conscious Digimon muttered something in Doraemon's direction. Ah, awake back there, are ya? Rudamon tried again to get its message across. Into grand speeches, I see, like the squad leader. You have won. I admit defeat. Do with me what you will. How gracious of you. Is this the famous code of honor I hear so much about? Bushido, was it? Doraemon asked, peppering Rudamon with questions as they lanked the Digimon across one last bit of floor and dropped them in front of the altar. You have made a dangerous choice. What is it that you want? Rudamon rasped. I've taken interest in Tartarus, in Kosuke Kizakata. I'm his partner, and he's charmed me, that's all. Is it not the same for you? Doraemon said calmly. Rudemon's eyes widened in surprise. It is time to repay him for all the love and kindness he has shown me, and change the world in the process. I will free the digital world, though I do not know what changes that will bring. It cannot possibly be any worse. The stone circle began to glow. Kosuke! If you have questions, keep them brief. Kosuke looked unusually keyed up and alert. Not panicky. Impatient. Everything he'd worked for was coming to a head. He kept typing code into his virtual monitor. You're going to access the source domain, the system itself, right? Eiji guessed this was the step they needed in order to get at least the system-level data and manipulate it, seeing as they were already in the source domain. Access it, manipulate it with any luck, we'll gain admin privileges over it. It's the only way we'll find the people who went DMIA in this infinite digital world. Can you run a search for Leon's Pulsemon? I only have the identification code for the Black Ogremon. Well, I remember Pulsemon sent, Lugumon said, sending Kosuke data that was as good as any identification code for tracking down Pulsemon. Now all we need is the DMIA treatment Professor Isenji gave me, Kosuke said, opening his hand to reveal the syringe full of data floating in the air. Yulin's shoulders dropped. That meant Professor Isenji not only signed off on Operation Tartarus, he aided Kosuke in executing it. For all she knew, he was its mastermind. There's no turning back now, Kosuke said to himself as much as anyone else. Yulin, I'm sure you want to help Saya too. Bear witness. Code enveloped in light streamed through the frigid air, connecting the three floating objects at the altar to the interfaces on their respective prototype Digimon. Whoa, Eiji said, in awe of the legendary codecracker. No humans had ever set foot in this place. Their passage beyond the gateway was like setting foot on the dark side of the moon. They were the first to leave their mark on the source domain between the gateway and the limitless expanse of the digital world. For all they'd done, this was still just the beginning. They were going to venture out into that vast expanse. The blocks comprising the stone circle began to glow, revealing symbols in some unknown language, ancient code only the prototype Digimon could decrypt. Hang on, sire. Decryption in progress. The prototype Digimon at the altar synchronized with one another. Humanity, with its many tools and iron will, was about to travel far and wide across the digital. The light of the pillars flickered and died. The entire process shut down, taking out Kosuke's virtual monitor. Eiji turned to look, but... Good morning, friends. Darkness. Chapter 4, Part 8. For a moment, Eiji had nothing to go on. No sight, no sound, nothing. A moment later, his vision returned. Or the lights came back on. It was hard to say which. When his eyes finally focused, he saw that the stone circle had completely inverted itself. Whoa, hang on, what? No, that wasn't quite right. The stone circle hadn't inverted. Eiji found himself lying down on the floor. Ugh! Lugumon grunted. Lugumon, you okay? Eiji said, jumping to his feet. Lugumon lay flat on the ground, struggling. I can't move. Something was very wrong. Rudimon was also laid out, though that wasn't a new development. Lugumon and Doramon lay inside the stone circle, as did Kosuke and Yulin's wholized forms. The system shutdown must have knocked everyone unconscious. The interfaces on each of the prototype Digimon were still lit, but they were slowly dimming. Lugumon! Eiji shouted. The light in Lugumon's interface went out, and they lost consciousness. The light returned to their interface a moment later, signalling a reboot. This time, however, the interface was executing a ton of unintelligible code. What? Kosuke's voice began to tremble. He kept trying to restart his virtual monitor, only for it to crash each time, spewing a long string of error messages across his field of view. The source code decryption process had been cancelled without warning, at the worst possible time. "Good morning, friends," a voice said softly. The voice was gentle, familiar, like it was greeting them after a long day's work. But then why good more? Eiji spun around to face its source. "Professor Isenji?" Eiji said softly. It certainly looked like his silhouette. He stood with his back to his pupils. "I'll take it from here," the professor responded. There he stood, dressed as he always did in the DDL laboratory. "Professor?" Yulin said, dazed. "What are you doing? Why?" Kosuke said in a haze, befuddled by the professor's sudden appearance. "Why are you so surprised?" he said in his distinctive cadence as he turned around. Somehow, Professor Tomonori Risenji stood before them in the source domain. Kosuke and Yulin quietly got to their feet, understandably tense. Their professor had just knocked them unconscious with a single phrase. Or was it code? "After all, I asked you to raise these prototype Digimon for me," the professor continued. That moment had been a turning point in each of their lives. "Now I suppose I can do this at any point, but what better time than now? Restrain." "Gah! What is this? Ah!" Lugumon and Dorumon were now restrained by the exact same tool they'd used on Rudamon. "How did you do that?" Dorumon shouted, stunned. Most Digimon, when conscious, were protected by their own security systems that made restraining them with software tools non-trivial. Rudamon had been an easy capture only because they'd been knocked out first. "What did I just say? I asked you to raise them for me. Did you think I was giving them to you?" Professor Isenji said, sternly. "It was inside us from the beginning," Lugumon shouted. Dorumon's head whipped towards Lugumon, eyes wide. The only exception for the restraint tool bypassing their onboard security was that it had been installed in the prototype Digimon from the start. "Did you tamper with Rudamon?" Yulin asked, alarmed. "It's part of a suite of research tools implanted in each Digimon, and each of your Digimon linkers. Did I not mention this at all when I gave them to you?" the professor said nonchalantly. Eiji looked at his wrist. The Digimon linker was full of spyware. The constant health monitoring and logging of Lugumon's progress wasn't just for Eiji's benefit. It was getting beamed back to DDL. "I can also forcibly take control of the Digimon, if need be, even if your mind-linked research requires safeguards, wouldn't you agree? For example, if a valuable prototype were to, say, go berserk and turn into Holugumon, that would be rather unfortunate, wouldn't it, Eiji?" Professor Isenji turned towards Eiji, whose jaw went slack. "What, you consider your Digimon are my tools, and I manage them as I see fit. Do I make myself clear?" With that, his virtual avatar walked to the centre of the stone circle. The three prototype Digimon struggled futilely against their restraints. The prototype Digimon are meant to access the source domain's data, and the Digimon linkers are meant to serve as a network bridge between the digital world and the real world. Yulin said this softly, as a fuller view of the professor's plan dawned on her. "What is all that? Is that noise?" Eiji took note of an odd shimmer that ran over Professor Isenji's image every so often. Professor Isenji was hololizing himself via the combined projections from each of their Digimon linkers. He was nothing more than a video feed projected out into space. He lacked the same volume that Eiji and the others had on account of being properly hololized. Nevertheless, he, not Kosuke, was now in full control of Operation Tartarus. Rather, he always had been. The Digimon, the equipment everyone used to interface with them, it was all under Professor Isenji's control. It was all right there in front of them, and worse, they'd agreed to the terms. "I was always under DDL's control," Lugumon said, trying to regain the last of their memory. It was coming back in fits and starts. But the demon wolf of the Castle of Nine Wolves recalled their capture in the war slum at the hands of the DDL employees. That, and the installation of a restraint tool in case the Digimon went berserk in the course of the experiment. They were as Fenrir, bound by Gleipnir in the legend as old. Naturally, This was all D4 classified. The plan was clever, to be sure. The restraints were disguised as research tools so that the Digipolice wouldn't find them, if they even thought to look for them in the first place. Professor Usenji had never even given Yulin any reason to doubt him, after all. Kosuke always saw him as his closest ally. They were to be family. "Lugumon," Doraemon said, through a grimace. "You, me, Rudamon, DDL managed all of us at one point or another. That's when they installed the restraint tool in us, either directly or through the new Digimon linker. Those were the only ways they could have bypassed the Digimon security protocols." "Ah, it's not so uncommon. Even humans have objects and implements left inside them during surgery that they never notice even as they heal," Professor Usenji added, though the example was of no use to the Digimon now. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" Kosuke exploded, slamming his error-laden virtual monitor aside. He shot daggers at the professor's projection, but his tone was as petulant as any first-year student. "Let me put it in a way you code-crackers would understand. Your story has now become mine. It really is that simple." He wasn't physically present in any meaningful way, but he was now in control. He'd code-cracked their story, their lives. And so long as the prototype Digimon remained the decryption key, it would be Professor Usenji who turned the page on this chapter. "Now, watch closely. I'll do this one step at a time." He set to work. First, the data object connected to the interface on Doraemon's head and code began flowing between them, restoring part of the signal. "What are you doing?" Kosuke bellowed. "I think it's obvious. I'm decrypting the source domain's code. It's only right that I be the one to do it, is it not?" the professor said, glancing at Kosuke. "Who better than Tomonori Usenji, foremost expert on the digital world, to take the next great leap in the field?" Kosuke stood by helplessly while his partner Digimon was hijacked before his eyes. "Accessing source domain code," came an announcement, stepping on the last few words of Professor Usenji's speech. It was a flat, effectless voice, cold and robotic. Was this voice of the source domain itself? "Lugumon!" AG yelled, furiously typing away at his virtual monitor in a bid to regain control. "It's not looking good," the wolf replied feebly. They were already giving up, still conscious but unable to move. The system had completely taken over their body through their interface. AG struggled to forcibly regain control despite the fact that Professor Usenji was nothing more than a video feed who wasn't even mind-linked to the Digimon he now controlled. There was no way to cut the projection, let alone sever the professor's connection to the Digimon. What if they couldn't stop Professor Usenji at all? "We're supposed to be on the same side," Kosuke shouted, desperate now. "I want to save Saya too. Professor Usenji, please," AG yelled. He felt like a child trying to insert himself into an adult's conversation. "What is it, AG? I'm rather busy." So, are you wondering what the incentive to digivolve Lugumon to their ultimate form was? Well, no, you have to listen to me. Alright then. I only heard from Tartarus, from Kosuke in passing, but this Saya, the woman who's DMIA and partnered to the Black Ogumon, she's your daughter, isn't she? "Decrypting source domain code," the source domain intoned. The very next moment, the signal between the Digimon flickered, and the process stalled. "Ugh!" Doraemon grunted as they tried to stand up, defying their restraints. "After the accident, I promised Kosuke I would look after him, even once he dropped out of school and left the company. I promised I would do the same for Yulin, whatever she decided to do after she left," Tomonori said, explaining his cover-up of the accident in an effort to protect his pupil's future. "The two of you made me proud of my decision to invest so much in you. So just think of this as me calling in the favour you owe me for granting you so many opportunities in life." This was the professor's big moment. His chance to usher in a revolution that would forever change humanity and the digital world. "I don't see what that has to do with my question." "You wouldn't. This was all before your time, anyhow," Professor Usenji said gently, brushing aside AG's attempts to insert himself in the conversation. "But that's why you're going to save her, right? Kosuke's fiancée? Your daughter? This was all wrong. Eiji and Kosuke were supposed to be helping Saya, Leon, and Pulsemon. That was the whole reason Eiji and Lugumon were doing any of this. So why are you fighting Kosuke? You're on the same side, like he said. Eiji didn't know whose side he was on anymore. Ah, you're a fascinating young man, Eiji. You appear completely oblivious, but you see everything so clearly at just the right time. What? Are you complimenting me? I like you. I really do. That's why I was going to tell you everything, even the things I never told Kosuke. Okay. We'll start with the fact that I'm not the least bit interested in looking for that black Agumon. But that's your daughter's partner Digimon. What do you mean you don't? You gave Kosuke the stimulant to... What? Eiji felt like the bottom was dropping out of the whole world. Not the least bit interested, huh? Kosuke said. He knew exactly what the professor meant by that turn of phrase. I mean it. What's lost is lost. The plan you've dedicated half your life to, Kosuke, is a monument to wasted effort, the professor bellowed. No, Tartarus, think for a second. Don't let him break you, Doraemon shouted, struggling against their restraints. His lack of interest in the Black Agumon, in his own DMIA daughter, had to be a ploy. Professor, Yulin interjected. What now? I've had a hunch for a long time. I can't stop thinking about it, no matter how hard I try, she said. Professor Vicenzi grinned. Your hunch may well be correct, officer. Without warning, an index appeared before them. A dome swept over the seemingly infinite expanse of the source domain, covered in information that flew overhead like constellations in a planetarium. Through a multi-layered projection of a tree, stretching on to infinity, growing wider and wider as it went, was a single, simple line of light. This is it! The Universal Directory Information Tree, the professor said, sifting through the data to arrive at a minute point, deep, deep within the structure. Search complete, the source domain's voice intoned. A small bit of data appeared as it was decrypted. A spark. Bit by bit, a small, fairy-like Digimon appeared, wreathed in crackling lightning. Pulsemon! What's Pulsemon doing here? Lugumon and Eiji's delight gave way to puzzlement. Pulsemon's face was completely blank, its eyes vacant. Well, what do you think? This is indeed the Pulsemon you and Lugumon were looking for, the professor said. Eiji swallowed hard. This is but a taste of what can be done with the control of the source domain's data, he continued, every word dripping with a sense of superiority. You mean we can search the entirety of the digital world from here? Yulin said in amazement. Here, in the depths of the digital world, where no human had ever tread, one could search for any Digimon by their identification code. Before anyone had time to process the power of what they had witnessed, another light shot out in search of its target. Another form appeared before them. Eiji swallowed hard once more. The Black Agumon! Kosuke shouted. The form of a small dinosaur-like Digimon floated before his eyes. It didn't look black in and of itself, so much as the image itself appeared to be monochrome, like a creature from an old movie given three-dimensional form. As suspected. Even if the mind linker perish, the partner Digimon doesn't suffer the same fate, Professor Vicenzi said clinically. Wait, what did you just say? Eiji stammered. The words replayed over and over in his head. Even if the mind linker perishes? Shiz, Yulin said, her heart dropping as the hunch she'd done her best not to entertain proved to be true. She's dead? Professor Vicenzi opened a virtual monitor above his head. A video feed of Saya, ensconced in a capsule full of coloured fluid, appeared before them. Saya! Yulin cried, tears welling in her eyes. The image blinked out of existence, like an old tube television turning off. It was all fake. Oh yes, for quite some time now. Before I continue on with the reading of Digimon Seekers, I just want to do a quick update. So, as of Chapter 4, Part 9, which I'll be reading shortly, they have decided to release it daily from now on. I'm assuming that's just for the remainder of Digimon Seekers, so until it finishes, so it will be a daily release. However, the main reason why I'm putting in this little update is that, judging by this segment, so for Part 9, the translation kind of takes a little bit of a dip in quality, which means that I mean, I'll do my best to read it as cohesively as possible, so it kind of makes sense for this English reading of it, but it does make me a little bit concerned because the last time we had daily updates, that being the first 7 or so parts of Digimon Seekers when it first started, it kind of had a terrible translation that we were given. So I'm kind of worried at this point that because it is daily again, the translations are going to be rushed and are going to be lower in quality. And for part 8, which I've already recorded, which is you would have already just listened to, it had a fine translation, and that was yesterday's part. So today's the first one of like kind of daily updates, and then from now on it's going to be daily. So I'm worried that the rest of the chapters, or the rest of the parts rather, are going to also have not good translations. So that's why I'm kind of recording this little update in just before I start part 9 of chapter 4. And hopefully I'm wrong. Hopefully for part 10 onwards it's going to be fine, but I just thought I'd put that in here. Also, again, I'm going to try to keep up with these updates because if they are daily for the rest of it, I don't want to be too far behind. And yeah, this part is a little bit longer than the last part, so I'm not sure about how long the rest are going to be as of recording this. So yeah, I'm going to go on to continue on with chapter 4 part 9, and I just thought I'd update everyone. And yeah, again, if any of this doesn't make sense, don't blame me. It's the translation, it's the official translation that is not so good, and I dare say that the following parts are going to have the same or similar issues, but we can but hope it's not entirely terrible. Chapter 4, Part 9. You're lying. It was both a rejection of the premise and what Kosuke desperately wanted to be true. The bones of the story that had kept him going were cracking. Such a predictable reaction. Ah, well, at least it was a useful lie, seeing as it kept you going this long, the professor said, a self-satisfied grin plastered on his face. He relished grinding Kosuke into dust from the inside. If his entire plan ended up going to hell, at least he'd have the pleasure of utterly destroying another man with a few simple words. By the way, that medical facility actually exists, and it is also true that Saya, who was in a vegetative state, was transferred to the hospital. No matter how much research I did, the records were perfect. Saya is alive, even at this moment. It's only for the record. What was fake was the footage I showed you from time to time. Mr. Kogata! Eiji raised his voice. I thought I had to talk to him anyway. Look, it's Black Agumon! You are the Digimon that SOC has been searching for! Hearing Eiji's words, Kosuke looked at the Black Agumon and came to his senses. There it was. The Digimon that would fetch an exceptional reward of 100 million DC. The Digimon Kosuke spent half his life looking for. He was right to establish Operation Tartarus, to crack his way into the source domain in order to find it. He'd chosen a path that led him to success, right up until his mentor hijacked his operation. I don't believe you, Kosuke spat in Professor Isenji's direction. I refuse to believe Saya's dead, not until I've administered this medicine myself, and we'll see who's right, he said, gripping the syringe in his hand. He walked over to the Black Agumon. The Digimon, for its part, looked scared and unsure, but didn't try to flee at the sight of the syringe. Go on. The medicine in the syringe is very real, the professor said, causing Kosuke to hesitate. The Black Agumon before you is undoubtedly her partner Digimon. The identification codes match. And I've only lied to you about one thing, as I said. Believe what you want about whether or not her body is still in that facility. Are you willing to live with the consequences? What consequences? You're a genius, but you make mistakes under pressure. That medicine will wake up the consciousness of a DMIA victim inside its partner Digimon Digicore and restore its self-awareness. Suppose you give it to the Black Agumon and wake up Saya's consciousness, but it finds it has no body to return to. What becomes of it then? The professor wondered aloud. Kosuke knew exactly where this was headed. He believed her consciousness was still in the Black Agumon. He didn't want to believe she'd died in the real world. He hoped against hope for a miracle, and knew he was being willfully ignorant of any other outcomes. But he also knew he had to try, regardless of which part of the professor's little speech had been a lie. "This is the occult you're dabbling in, Kosuke. If that's what you want, by all means, administer the medicine. I will stand by and watch with great interest," the professor continued. Kosuke felt his heart break at the choice. It overwhelmed him. The syringe clattered to the ground. He felt weak. He couldn't do it. So long as he could cling to the hope that Saya's consciousness was still in there, so long as his only choice was to pray for a miracle rather than be certain, he couldn't administer the shot. But doing so was the only way to know she'd wake up. He'd either save her or seal her fate. It was too much to bear. "The digital world truly can change lives," Professor Risenji gloated, as if none of this involved him in the least. "Data sector decryption complete." An anguished scream ripped through the air. Doraemon bent over backward, their heads snapping violently backward until they collapsed. The light on its interface gradually went out. "Kosuke, what?" "Forgive me, Doraemon. You deserved better," Kosuke said, and dropped to his knees in front of the Digimon. "You had no other choice, did you? We chose the right paths, but they were flawed from the start. I never suspected Risenji would be our undoing, and here I thought I'd come to understand humans. If only a little." Doraemon was shockingly sanguine. "How kind of you, Doraemon," Professor Risenji said, full of sincere love and reverence. "What a beautiful resolution to our tale. You all did what you could. Are you trying to console us, Professor, or send us into a rage?" "You can't just praise kids for doing their best these days, not until you see some results," Kosuke said with a dry laugh. "Be that what it may, none of the rest of you knew what Kosuke was going to do once he decrypted the source domain's data, did you? That's very dangerous territory to be in, which is why I should be the one to take the next step," the professor said, returning to the matter at hand. "I planned on saying you did it, you know. I was going to give you all the credit. None of that mattered, as long as I found Saya and had the chance to bring her back," Kosuke said quietly. "And I appreciate your love for my daughter," the professor said flatly. Kosuke groaned. The heaviness of the past bore down on him, binding him hand and foot, crushing his chest. "I'll come up with a story that makes you look good, Kosuke. I really didn't want to lose you, you know," Professor Risenji said warmly. "Why bother after all this torture?" "Kosuke, my prodigy, my right-hand man, I used my vast funds and every connection I had to keep her alive in your mind for as long as I could. If you had found out sooner, you would have drifted off, like a kite cut loose from its string," the professor said, chewing the scenery now. It was all an elaborate troll. Professor Risenji was the public face of Abaddon Electronics as its founder, while Kosuke continued working in the shadows as the codecracker. So long as there were hope for reviving Saya, they would always be teacher and student, father and son, even. There would always be a little more to extract from Kosuke. "And now you're finished with me." The words of a man who has truly lost everything. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I must get back to work. Hang in there just a little while longer, Ryu," Professor Risenji said in Rudemon's direction. Code streamed into the vaccine object from Rudemon's interface. "Decrypting vaccine sector." Rudemon began convulsing. "Vaccine, very good. Well, that's enough of the boring talk. Let's get things moving along, shall we?" There was no fighting back now. Rudemon was too injured from the battle on the other side of the gateway, and Yulin had been mindling too long to do anything drastic. "Why do any of this at this point, if not to save Saya?" Yulin asked poignantly. Was the professor mixed up with some sort of criminal element? She tried to put the pieces together. He couldn't very well just abandon his daughter's body, could he? Assuming he had sent her overseas for treatment, that would only complicate matters if the body did need to be claimed. He could be charged with fraud if he was still receiving insurance payments, but bringing a case like that against a billionaire and public figure would be exceedingly difficult. "I told you about the source domain, Kosuke, but what I'm really after is the source Digimon," the the professor explained as the decryption continued. What's the source Digimon? AG asked. The model digital life form, born at the same time as our world, the seed from which all other AI life forms digivolved, the sacred chalice of the digital world, if you will. Fascinating, isn't it? My heart races just thinking about it. He grew more excited with each passing minute, thinking of all the data he'd get to see in real time. What he went on to describe sounded like the stem cells of the digital world. A Digimon that was nothing in its current form, but capable of becoming anything. Connect with real-world data, however, caused it to give birth to several new kinds of Digimon. The prototype Digimon were among them. The most dangerous of these were sealed off in a new system within the digital world. But the source Digimon kept receiving outside data. Though the source Digimon itself had not taken any particular form, it was undoubtedly the engine fueling endless Digivolutions. I'm warning you, it's too dangerous, Yulin said sharply. She'd heard enough. This had to stop. You're quite right. I have no idea how dangerous this source Digimon might prove to be. That's why we have to leave it alone. It's too much for one person to handle, let alone all of humanity. Interfering with the source Digimon raised numerous ethical, philosophical, and religious quandaries. It needed to be bound by law, like cloning tech did so many years ago. Interfering with the source Digimon could give one the ability to create Digimon at will. I know, I happen to agree with you, even... Nevertheless, Risenji hesitated. Yulin knew what he was going to say next. You know how I loathe boredom. Think of it, I'll never be bored again. The scientist's curiosity knew no bounds, but Yulin never imagined he would go so far as to use his daughter's death and betray his own students to satisfy it. If this is who you truly are, Professor, you've lost whatever shred of respect I had for you. Have I ever been the type to care what others thought of me, Yulin? Maybe the failure of the Tartarus program had changed him after all, or simply unleashed something that was always there, spurred on by the loss of his daughter and Yulin's departure. My ultimate goal is to contract the source Digimon, communicate with it, become one with it. Yes, that's right. I'm going to mind link with the source Digimon. He intended to become the human overseer of the digital world. You traitor! Eiji shouted. Eiji couldn't stand it any longer. I beg your pardon? This is a betrayal. The SOC and DDL were joined at the hip, thanks to Kosuke and Professor Risenji's cooperation behind the scenes. The plan to break into the source domain was the professor's all along, for reasons all his own. His end goal was to mind link with the source Digimon, to control it. You want to take the most powerful partner Digimon in the digital world for yourself? Well, it sounds lovely when you put it like that, but remind me, exactly how have I betrayed you? The professor challenged. You didn't, Eiji said, his mind on the still restrained Lugumon. I see, good talk, the professor said with a nod. You offered me the job in the hopes I'd digivolve Lugumon to their ultimate form, right? Why else would a famous professor bother with a kid like me? The prototype Digimon must digivolve to their ultimate form in order to make full use of the interfaces on their head, yes. But the Berserker Lugumon form simply would not do it. The Mind Linker must maintain complete control with the tools available to them. Eiji's infiltration into the SOC had been a test to get Lugumon to digivolve. That much I follow. Your charisma won me over when we first met. I thought it was the chance of a lifetime. I thought I had finally found something worth fighting for. I was determined to use your fame and power to raise my own profile in the digital world. I was gonna turn my life around through my work as a codecracker. But I've grown since we first met. Eiji was no longer the A-class codecracker the professor hired. He was S-class now. I apologise for not filling you in sooner, but you know how it is, the professor purred. D4 classified. Yes, and your unfortunate circumstances, no living relations, for example, made you the ideal candidate. You mean I was convenient? Well, your DS values with Lugumon were certainly what sealed it for me, and had I told you everything, well, neither you nor Lugumon would have grown at all, as you put it. If you say so. Eiji and Lugumon learned, in time, to focus and take things as they came, to believe in their own potential, and never do anything by half-measured. Their thoughts worried, cried, celebrated, and puked with every fibre of their being. They'd hit rock bottom and clawed their way back up together, Maybe it was true that they wouldn't have grown as much as they had if the professor had been more hands-on, or if they had more information that gave them a sense of security. That felt like a lie, though. See, you get it. You know where you stand. So why are you sharing the righteous indignation of these two? They had nothing to do with you, unless... Is it sympathy? Why? Eiji asked, anger rising within him. You know why. Do you ever shut up, Risenji? Lugumon roared, rising to their feet in defiance of their bonds. We're losing our minds. I'm just listening to you rattle on. Their fur stood on end. Why? Professor Risenji asked, puzzlement screwing up his face. You said something when you were talking about finding our friend Pulsemon, that it was just a fraction of what the source domain's data sector could do. Eiji was furious that the professor showed no regard for the safety of his DMIA pupil, Leon Alexander. You know how I loathe boredom. The phrase had been rattling around Eiji's skull the moment the professor had said it. He felt compelled to throw it back at him. Oh, the boredom comment was merely a figure of speech, Eiji, the professor demurred. You were watching when we fought Kazuchimon and Lugumon turned into Halugumon. You could have stepped in and stopped it, but you didn't. The course of the Digivolution mattered more than Leon's life. Rather, it was more interesting, academically speaking. Leon was a pawn, a means to an end. The professor raised his eyebrows. Aha! You're mad at me on Leon's behalf. You two were quite close, weren't you? He's your student, Eiji lashed out. He couldn't believe he'd ever respect the professor. You keep talking without saying anything, Risenji. Have you ever taken a good hard look at yourself? Lugumon pressed. Keep barking, you mangy stray. Now, Eiji... I'm on their side, Eiji interjected, cutting the professor off. You were living a dead-end life when I found you. Is this how you betray my expectations of you? The professor countered. You're betraying me right now. Perhaps so. I wanted to be you at the start of all this. Now I want nothing to do with you. I overlooked your faults because I respected you, but I'm going to remember them for the rest of my life. And think about what a sour little man you are, Eiji seethed. You don't feel guilt, Yulin added. He had no guilt, no conscience, no empathy, nor could he see his own shortcomings. He craved stimulus. Results were everything. Everything else was a means to an end. That's what draws you to people to you. Your confident, shameless lies. You're a sociopath. Gee, squad leader, I wasn't going to go that far. Eiji couldn't help but recoil from such a bold armchair diagnosis. The professor stopped what he was doing, unable to concentrate. Point is, we don't believe a word you say anymore. You're lower than Sukamon, and twice as smelly, Lugumon said, spoiling for a fight. So you hate me now. Risenji's shoulders slumped. Hearing it from a Digimon hurt worse. You betrayed Leon, Old Man Tartarus, and the Digipolice lady. And as much as you might try to hide it, one day you're going to turn on me and Eiji too. I just know it. Is that what you think of me, Lugumon? It's what I know. Anyone who would use their own daughter's death for their own benefit cannot be trusted. Professor Risenji sighed. This was most uncomfortable. I put my trust in you. I catered to you, and now you would betray me. Goodness. Well, I suppose this next part will go far more smoothly if I do it myself anyhow. Eiji touched Lugumon's interface. Invisible code flew between them. Partner commands. Alone, you say? This was the end of the road. It was time to say goodbye. Eiji felt like he'd been living a dream, but he could see the door was closing on that life. Once Eiji settled on his feelings towards Risenji, he felt a massive amount of energy welling up within Lugumon. Their inextinguishable magical flame burned bright once more. Eiji heard the chains holding Lugumon screech and groan. They were in lockstep once again. Wow, Leon, you see, he knew too much, Professor Risenji said, looking at the Pulsemon where Leon's consciousness ostensibly lay dormant. He knew what my little lie was, and he got a little bit too powerful. He became a risk. The professor lamented with a frown. That doesn't look like a performance. You're actually sad about it, Eiji said. You have to nip it in the bud, you see. I've done it countless times. With Leon, of course, but also with Kosuke here. Eiji was always too busy with his own problems to think about judging anyone else. He and Lugomon called out to one another over their connection and reaffirmed their desire to save their friends. They were a team, and there was but one path in front of them. Their hearts became one, and Lugomon burst free of the restraint tool. Bits of chain flew through the air as Professor Isenji spun around, eyes wide with shock. "How did you break the restraint so easy?" "I've got hellfire in my veins. The moment my body feels any sort of foreign object, I can generate enough heat to burn through it," Lugomon said, head held high. Their fur once again stood on end as a flaming aura contained their body. "Now, listen here, mad scientist. You don't get to use people however you want." Lugomon let out a howl. They were determined to protect their pack from this enemy. "Mad scientist? Goodness, that hurts, Lugomon. You sure do know how to push my buttons. Eh? Looks like I've gone and given myself another to-do before finishing the decryption. You'll just have to wait a little longer, Roo buddy," Professor Isenji said as he paused the vaccine sector decryption. "This isn't going to end well for you," Eiji said as he readied his Digimon linker, hellfire bobbing and flickering on the screen. Chapter 4, Part 10. "He's after the source code, which he'll get once he's decrypted the data from all 3 sectors, Eiji said over the private chat he opened with Lugomon. Doraemon's data sector was already complete. Rudemon's vaccine sector decryption was paused for the moment. "He's also trying to override me and re-engage the restraints," Lugomon huffed. "And we can't just attack him directly. He's only a video projection. But then, how does he plan on hurting us? He's got pawns. Entities he can control to—" "What the?" Lugomon yelped. "Metal cannon!" Doraemon attacked without warning. Eiji covered his head and fell to the ground. Lugomon dodged, the metal projectile missing them by a hair's breadth. "The hell do you think you're doing?" "Yeah, what the hell, Kosuke?" Eiji barked. Kosuke was still in a daze over the news of Saya's death, but he turned his head towards the commotion. What are you doing, Doraemon?" Kosuke mumbled, his face contorting in confusion. A bad sign. A loud thunk shook the source domain. "Is someone else controlling you?" Doraemon didn't respond. Its eyes were vacant. "Professor!" Eiji protested. "You're controlling them, aren't you, Risenji?" Lugomon snarled, eyes fixed on the professor's video image. "One needn't be linked to a Digimon in order to control them. You codecrackers do it all the time. All you need is the right suite of tools." "No!" Yulin yelled, shaking her head. "It's one thing to restrain a Digimon while Kosuke's mind-linked, but engaging an external control? That shouldn't be possible." But it is, precisely because they're mind-linked," the professor said with a smile. "The presence of Kosuke's consciousness in Doraemon's Digicore is a gigantic backdoor." "This is because of me?" Kosuke wondered, looking down at his hands. His Digimon linker was sending 2 different signals. One obviously wasn't his. Tartarus, the legendary codecracker, was powerless. How weak are the broken-hearted!" Professor Risenji said this in his classic, overly dramatic way. Yulin and Eiji tried to get Kosuke's attention. He heard none of their plaintive screams, their sympathetic appeals, their fury. He sank further inwards. No words could heal his broken heart. Doraemon, too, was powerless to resist and succumb to the professor. They were nothing more than a puppet now. "Digivolve!" the professor bellowed. "Again?" Eiji yelped, recoiling in shock. "Digivolve to champion, then your ultimate level Dorogreymon form, and then to your mega level Dorogoremon form." With a mighty roar, Doraemon digivolved once more into Dorogoremon. Its cold, lifeless eyes stared back at the humans and the other Digimon. "What a lovely tableau of despair!" Professor Isenji trumpeted, standing beside the silver dragon he'd unleashed. "So, we're gonna have to fight Dorogoremon?" Eiji asked Lugomon. "Now then, Eiji, you make quick decisions. So which will it be? Help me decrypt the data that will lead me to the source Digimon, and all is forgiven. That's all I want. You'll be my pupil, both at the DDL and the university," the professor offered. A bargain with the devil. "Tokyo Electric!" Just think of it. a cushy apartment in the Dandenong district, all-you-can-eat privileges at the DDL cafe, full employee benefits, perhaps you'll meet a lovely lady among the other employees. Assuming things don't work out between you and Hatsune, that is. What? Eiji was overwhelmed. You have 10 seconds. I look forward to your response, the professor said, and began counting down. 10, 9, 8... Eiji recalled the B he got on his mock university entrance exam. If he could skip the exam altogether and get into university, he'd eventually be able to work his way up to working at a high-profile company like Abbott Electronics. With some luck, he could become a manager or a director, or even start his own business. He began to dream about the multitude of futures opening up before him. He would finally be a winner. No more hourly jobs, stability enough to plan ahead 10, maybe even 20 years. He'd be set for life. Everything would break his way for far longer than he'd ever imagined. As he stood, he had no freedom. Seeing as he didn't have an official job or any training, he certainly didn't have money or power, and no trust in society. He had nothing but time, shot through with an anxiety of instability. That would be nice. Mocha has a boyfriend already, but other than that... You can't be serious, Eiji! Lugumon barked. Their head whipped around to face Eiji, who simply put his hand on their forehead and held them at bay. Listen, Lugumon, he went on, petting the interface on Lugumon's forehead. I've always wanted to find a way into the winner's circle. I want the flashy lifestyle. I got a taste of it the first time I went to DDL. I finally felt like an adult with a real job. That was the dream. And I mean, it brought us together. Sure, but... Lugumon said, giving Eiji the benefit of the doubt. I knew you'd understand. I personally guarantee your salary now. Professor Isenji cut in, raising his arms in welcome. Then again, Eiji shrugged. I'm not the type to make decisions based on simple list of pros and cons, am I? Besides, it's like the professor said, the digital world can change lives. So it was for Kosuke Kizakata, Shu Yulin, and Leon Alexander, whose lives were ruined by their encounters with the professor's forays into the digital world. To say nothing of Saya Risenji's death, which was now just a bargaining chip to her own father. Eiji wasn't about to endorse that behaviour. Eiji had seen firsthand how the digital world brought people together around their adventures in the new world. It was a place that should change people's lives for the better. It could give life meaning. It could make time invaluable, it let people live their lives, and it was impossible to put a price on that. I came here in search of a way to emerge victorious in the digital world. I wanted to change my life, and I'm gonna find a way to leave my mark on this place, 'cause at the end of the day, I'm still a codecracker, through and through. He'd raise his sails to the networked winds and keep looking for a way to put his stamp on the digital world, with Lugumon there at his side. They'd save their friends and press onward together. What more could he want from life? You've got to forge your own path, and Eiji knew just how he was going to do it. He struck a defiant pose, one he thought was sure to rub Professor Isenji the wrong way. The professor pursed his lips in disappointment. And that's why I'll stick with you, Eiji. There might be some bumps along the road, but we know what has to be done. You said it yourself. Lugumon said, raising their front legs up to give Eiji a little push on the butt. Bumps along the road? Eiji, haven't I give you my highest marks? The professor wheedled. Why are you still talking, old man? Lugumon barked. Like I said, I respected you as a mentor, Eiji said, trying to keep his voice calm. I wanted to be a major figure in the digital world, just like you. Professor Isenji stood in silence, unsure of what to say. This lowly codecracker, who had nothing and would amount to nothing, was sticking to his pretentious ideals. But now I see I was wrong to put you on that pedestal. I shouldn't aim to be like you. In other words... Eiji hesitated. You make us sick! Get out of our way! Lugumon cut in before Eiji could choose his words. The professor remained silent for a moment. His warm, performative smile was gone, replaced by a displeasure he could no longer hide. Biting the hand that feeds, I see. Why do you continue to pick the losing side in this fight? I know I'm giving up a lot. The university, meals in the cafe, all of it out the window. but I do what I do for the people who believe in me. The rest will work out." He thought of Leon, who tried to help Eiji as best he knew how. "This is your last chance. I presume your answer won't change?" Professor Isenji said as he sent a command to Dorogoromon, the Digimon targeting Lugomon. "We only get one life. I can't help but come to my friends' aids, even when they've lost all hope. Codecracker freedom may not be perfect, but it's still freedom." "Showtime, Eiji!" Lugomon barked. "Lugomon Digivolve!" Eiji said, cutting his hololization and returning to the Digicore. Lugomon quickly digivolved all the way to their ultimate level form, Solugomon. Hellfire poured out of the generators on Solugomon's shoulders, which emitted a low rumble as they exhausted the tremendous heat within. This form had complete control over the demonic wolf within, and a few parts of its armor plating were now covered in ancient code that burned bright as a star in the night sky. It had the ability to convert the massive amounts of hellfire energy within to boost its attack, defense, or posture at a moment's notice. "Prominence laser!" A beam of hellfire the temperature of the sun shot out of Solugomon's fingers, compounded by electromagnetic forces to form a plasma several thousand degrees Kelvin in temperature. What was once a flamethrower from Lugomon's champion form was now a beam with far more range that could incinerate whatever it touched with an inextinguishable flame. The beam connected, causing a hissing sound like meat touching a hot cast iron pan. "What the?" Solugomon cried out in shock. Dorogoromon stood its ground. It caught the Prominence laser in its bare hands, flesh sizzling as it closed its fists and extinguished the inextinguishable. "Wow, very impressive," Professor Isenji said excitedly. "That was just a greeting," Solugomon said in return. "We barely saw any of the fight with Arumon," Eiji said timidly, recalling their late arrival to the fighting at the gateway and subsequent battle with Satsuki's cadre of Digi-Police troops. Now he'd have to reckon with the awesome power of Tartarus's partner Digimon on his own. Dorogoromon has a shockwave attack, Dorodin, and a charge attack, Brave Metal. That sounds simple, but those attacks make it effective at long and close range. There are no obvious openings to take advantage of in either attack. "You sure you want to help us, squad leader?" Eiji asked, turning to Yulin. "Arumon's armor made it possible to withstand a few hits and strikes back, but in your ultimate form, a single hit is likely to fry your Digicore." "No way!" Solugomon countered. "Excuse you?" "They're taking commands from software tools. They won't be anywhere near as powerful as when you two fought," Solugomon said. "I'm with squad leader, though," Eiji said. "Tools or not, Professor Isenji on the other end of the terminal, and Yulin's seen way more of what Dorogoromon can do than we have." Solugomon swung its wrench-like mace Venard through the air, struck a pose, and slammed its base into the ground. "Fear will only hold us back." "I can't argue with that. Time to steel ourselves for the fight ahead," Eiji said, firing himself up. "Let's fight like those scrappy little underdogs that we are." "You, Old Man Tartarus, and Eiji aren't heroes or gods. You're human," Solugomon said, pointing Vanguard at the professor's projection. "If you're trying to buy time with another one of your speeches, and I'll grant that you're good at it, you'd better think again," the professor said sternly. "You can't run out the clock on me. I'm simply controlling Dorogoromon with tools. Kosuke, on the other hand, he might well go DMIA. Eiji's heart skipped a beat. "Kosuke and Dorogoromon's limits aren't the same as yours either. They've been at this a long time, and here's the legendary Codecracker," the professor sneered. Eiji couldn't possibly tell how much time was left without some sort of connection to Dorogoromon, which meant waiting things out was off the table. Even with half its power, Dorogoromon would still be a formidable foe. "Let's take things to the next level, shall we?" Professor Isenji said this as Dorogoromon absorbed his video projection. He's adjusting his viewpoint. Does he think he can get close to mind-linked performance? Eiji wondered, poring over the data lighting up his virtual monitor. "Dorudin!" A shockwave roared across the source domain's vast expanse. Solugomon howled, set their shoulder generators to thrust, and flew into the air where they'd had better range of movement. Fast and unpredictable, so Lugumon has mega-level maneuverability, but why would they? Yulin said, cutting herself off as it dawned on her. So Lugumon wanted to have this fight in the air, forcing Doragoromon to attack from a distance so they could time the Digimon's attacks. But to Yulin, that was a fool's errand. There wouldn't be any time. Several stray bullets hit the Dorodin shockwave and broke it up in the air. So Lugumon glanced in Yulin's direction. "Committed to helping us, huh?" they said wryly. Yulin scoffed. So Lugumon looked further down below at Kosuke, still a drained husk of a man, at the immobile Rudamon, at the black Agumon and Pulsemon that had been teleported into the stone circle. Professor Rusenji remained laser-focused on Eiji's plan to lure him into the air. He readied another blast from Doragoromon's Dorodin, this time aimed not at Eiji or Solugumon, but at the stone circle itself. Yulin swallowed hard. He couldn't possibly risk crushing Rudamon. That would make decryption impossible. Killing Kosuke would sever the mind link upon which he relied. That left Pulsemon and the Black Agumon. The old man was cunning. She'd give him that. "You're going to use Leon's Pulsemon as a bargaining chip now? You're disgusting!" Bluff or no bluff, Eiji was out of time. "Skull Rage!" So Lugumon left trails of hellfire in the wake as they shot toward Doragoromon and flung Vanguard out ahead for a quick strike. "It's funny," Professor Rusenji said, "how easy it is to control humans, even without software tools." The Dorodin shot was a bluff after all. So Lugumon's speed no longer mattered. Professor Rusenji cancelled his attack and flung Doragoromon's arm out to deliver a powerful backhanded strike that smashed into Vanagand and Solugumon in one clear motion. Eiji felt the shock within the Digicore, but didn't force Solugumon to recover quickly enough for a counterattack. It was better to be knocked back than suffer any more damage in the moment. "Now we're getting somewhere. Doragoromon is quite fearsome, even with software tools. If only I weren't stuck using just half its power," Professor Rusenji said, nevertheless quite pleased with himself. "So grating. He's in far too good of a mood," Solugumon growled. "Let's try this," Eiji said, inputting a command. Solugumon loosened another round of Prominence Laser, which Doragoromon deflected with one arm. Solugumon launched another, and another, and another. Unable to fully contain each shot, Doragoromon slowly became engulfed in flames. The beams lacked the piercing ability of a truly calibrated shot, however, meaning the flames never quite caught and were thus easily extinguished. Smoke billowed off Doragoromon's body. "It was a nice try, but you'll have a much more imaginative than that," Professor Rusenji sneered, paying it no mind. The software tools gave him no sense of Doragoromon's pain. That was a privilege reserved for Kosuke, who remained mind-linked. "Well, I've certainly had enough for now. I'm quite busy," he said. "That's a lie. Research is all you have time for," Eiji challenged. "Worry not, Eiji. You're absolutely correct about that, which is why I have to get back to work. Lucky for you, I can't afford to destroy your Digicore if I want to finish decrypting the source domain's data. Tell me, have you ever peered into hell? No, right. You lost your parents in that awful plane crash. Surely that gave you a glimpse." "You," Eiji sputtered, the words catching his throat. "How do you feel on theme park rides? Would you like to experience the same fear and pain your parents felt? Perhaps you wouldn't feel so comfortable defying me if you did. I'll break you yet." Eiji couldn't square the side of the professor with the one he knew in his mind. The preeminent digital world researcher. A man worthy of Eiji's respect. The man who placed protection of the digital world, and the Digimon within, above all else. That outlook profoundly moved Eiji once upon a time, as did the ethos that any involvement with the digital world necessarily involved meddling in the lives of Digimon. Those were the thoughts of a man with reverence for the digital world. A love of the digital world curled into greed. Greed. The familiar motivator that instantly removes compassion from the equation. Suddenly, it didn't seem to matter how many people the professor hurt. He hadn't killed anyone, but he chewed them up and spat them out, leaving them a shell of their former selves. It wasn't all that different in the end, yet he could still sleep at night and carry on ruining more lives the next day. He was a very human monster from the real world, and now he was loose in the digital world. AG wasn't about to become its next victim, but he also wasn't sure if he should try to cut a deal or flee. Neither option was appealing, but the alternatives were worse. "Rusenji, you monster! I'm sick of this game of tag. It's a waste of time anyway, especially considering I've got Pulsemon trapped in, eh?" Professor Rusenji cut himself short. Pulsemon was gone. The smoke surrounding Doragoromon slowly lifted, revealing an empty space where Yulin, Rudamon, and the Black Agumon stood within the certain circle. Only Kosuke remained at the altar, and he wasn't alone. "A Tyrannomon? Where did you come from?" the professor asked, simultaneously befuddled and disappointed. The creature stood next to Kosuke, looking concerned. Kosuke didn't move a muscle. "What are you doing, Kosuke? Come on!" Eiji whispered. "Ah, I see what you've done, Eiji. Using your little Tyrannomon under cover of smoke. Very cute," the professor griped. The Prominence laser blast created just enough smoke to allow Tyrannomon from Eiji Digimon Dock to move the others to safety. But where had they taken them? Professor Rusenji wondered. There was nowhere to hide in the source domain. The altar. Of course. How else could it get so high up off the ground? A network of pillars and blocks below suspended the altar and the stone circle surrounding it above the ground. That left plenty of space underneath the structure in which to hide. But now there was no escape. Not so long as Doragoromon was under his control and Rudamon was still restrained. "Tyrannomon, old man Tartarus is fine where he is!" Salugomon barked. Pulsemon was the main point of concern, and they were safe. "Tyrannomon 1? Is that you? Hide, quick!" The words had scarcely left Eiji's lips when he heard a wet thud, followed by the Tyrannomon's pain roar. Static and noise poured from a wound in the Tyrannomon's shoulder. He never even saw the shot rip through the air. "How unsightly! This is no place for weak Digimon," the professor said, breaking Doragoromon out of its Dorodin stance. It had honed its shockwave to a fine point, mimicking a bullet. "Tyrannomon!" Eiji cried out. "Doragoromon can be precise as is powerful. That Tyrannomon could be turned to dust if I so choose." The Tyrannomon dropped to the ground, trembling, too terrified to move. It wouldn't be able to withstand another hit from the mega-level hunter. "In fact, perhaps I will. Only this time I'll send the entire hive instead of one little bee." Doragoromon launched a salvo of focused shockwaves at the small Digimon. It was quite surprised to find itself unharmed when it opened its eyes after the barrage subsided. It saw fire the colour of the sun, and felt Salugamon's arm wrapped tightly around it. "Ah!" Salugomon roared, grabbing at the arm that had taken the brunt of the attack. "I confess I don't know what you were thinking, Eiji," the professor said, aghast. "Throwing away your partner Digimon's arm for a piddly Tyrannomon you could easily replace? Preposterous!" Doragoromon remained still as Professor Rusenji struggled to make sense of Eiji's strategy. Salugamon's left arm hung limp at their side. Even with the rapid-fire attack diminishing the power of each individual shot, one hit from the Dorodin was all it took to wreck Salugamon's arm. "You saved my Tyrannomon," Eiji said softly. "You leave my packmates out of this!" Salugomon bellowed. It was all instinct. Salugomon was the boss of the 9th District, after all. The threat activated the wolf-like data at the heart of their Digicore that compelled them to protect the members of their pack at all costs. "You asked if I've ever peered into hell?" Eiji said, returning his focus to the battle ahead. "We'll show you what hell looks like, Rusenji!" Salugomon howled. Eiji and Salugomon were synced, and ready to digivolve one last time. They'd finally found true strength, and they were going to use it to protect those closest to them. A bright light enveloped Salugomon, and a new Digimon emerged in their place. Fenrilugomon, Mega, Dark Beast, Virus. Chapter 4, Part 11. The interface atop Salugamon's head unleashed the true creative potential of their Digicore. They dropped to all fours, assuming their wolfen form once more. The remnants of Glepnir hung loose around its neck. "Are you ready for the fires of hell?" Fenrilugomon growled as it emerged from the Digivolution's glow. The flames that covered its body burned pale blue, reaching tens of thousands of degrees Kelvin, equivalent to the surface temperature of the hottest stars in the Milky Way. Nevertheless, Fenralugomon was able to perfectly contain the massive amounts of energy rolling within. "Here I am, Professor, finally powerful enough to join your elite club," Eiji said as Fenralugomon squared up to Doragoromon. Eiji's bond with Lugomon deepened, their complete and total allegiance to one another allowing them to unlock Lugomon's mega form. The demon wolf, the hellhound prophesied to devour the god of gods, was finally free. They could not be slain, only contained. It was all the gods could do to contain the beast within Glepnir, the enchanted dwarven restraints. "Slow and steady wins the race, is that it?" Professor Iseji said with delight. "I have nothing but admiration for you two. There are many paths to mega level, but I never expected your desire to save Leon and Pulsemon alone to be the thing that did it. To be so young. Let me guess, your friends are just that important to you? Aren't yours?" Eiji shot back. It was time to take the fight to Professor Isenji. "After a certain age, it can be healthier to protect yourself from harmful relationships with a bit of distance. You learn to keep those who are useful to you close, while discarding those for whom you have no need. Now, you know, that actually makes sense." "Do you mean that?" "I sure do. Which is why I'm going to discard you here and now, Risenji," Eiji said resolutely. The professor took a moment to think. "You win that round, 1 point for you. I'll pay you a nice fat bonus. Orders of magnitude over your normal pay." "Orders of magnitude?" "Snap out of it, Eiji, you're not for sale!" Fenralugomon shouted at Eiji from within the Digicore. "I wasn't seriously considering it. I don't need any extra money." Eiji shook his head and checked his virtual monitor to see how long they could remain mind-linked in this state. "We're going to go all in from the start. I want you running at full strength." Fenralugomon leapt into the air, unleashing an unholy roar that shook the source domain. They were the beasts prophesied to destroy the world and birth the next, and they let Professor Isenji hear it. It was majestic and awe-inspiring, like watching a star explode. "Ragnarok howling!" Eula looked on from the stone circle as Eiji and Fenralugomon charged into battle. The stone pillars and slabs looked sturdy enough to keep her safe from any stray projectiles that came in contact with them, but the haphazard way they were thrown together left much to be desired in terms of actual cover. Better than standing out in the open, certainly, but not entirely safe. This was where the Tyrannomon charged with getting her and Rudamon to safety deposited the two of them, and it would have to do. Another Tyrannomon carefully lowered Pulsemon and the Black Algamon to the ground nearby. Even in the midst of battle, Eiji took the time to figure out how to get everyone else to safety using the Digimon in his dock. The third and final Tyrannomon limped into view, favouring its wounded shoulder and carrying something on its back. "Kosuke," Yulin said as he came into view from behind the Tyrannomon. He hopped down to the ground, gave the Tyrannomon a pat, and staggered past Yulin, toward the Black Algamon. "Forgive me," Kosuke said weakly as he passed by. "I see now. You weren't warning me about interfering with the source domain, but with Professor Isenji." "What's that in your hand?" Yulin asked, her eyes drawn to Kosuke's closed fist. "I'm here to put an end to it all. Sire, at least I'll be the one to do it," he said, reaching the syringe out towards the Black Algamon. The Digimon stared right back at him. I can't hear Doragoromon or Doraemon's voice anymore. The professor, he has taken everything from me. If only I could have brought you back." He'd lost in the game of life. He was without hope. "Look at me, Kosuke," Yulin said sternly. "Let's see what Eiji and his Fenralugomon can do." The fiery demon wolf burned a pale blue at the far end of the stone circle. The hellfire risked searing the eyes of anyone who looked directly at it. Concentric circles of plasma heated to tens of thousands of degrees Kelvin radiated out from Fenralugomon. With a powerful howl, the ring shot out towards Doragoromon, creating powerful shockwaves with each impact. The destructive force of each successive blast soon sent the Digimon skittering several meters across the ground, like a doll carelessly tossed aside. Fenrilugomon readied its next attack, leaping through the air until it was right over its prey. It began to slash at Doragoromon with the fiery beams that issued from its limbs. Jotunheim Gale! Ag, you've brought out Fenrilugomon. He did it! He made it to Mega Level! Codecrackers and the Digipolice were diametrically opposed, but their leaders briefly put aside the differences and acknowledged the incredible skill of a fellow mind-linker. They knew what it felt like to be so locked in and determined that one was able to push through to the next level. This was all he ever wanted. To be on the winning team, Kosuke muttered. Since he'd lost so much in the real world, Yulin said, follow the logic. He'd lost his parents, lived in a tiny apartment, and bounced from temp job to temp job. And here he is, fighting for his friend, Leon Alexander, a hacker, no less. The one who went DMIA. He does what he has to do, and he doesn't back down even when it costs him. He's got what it takes. Because it doesn't matter what it costs if you've got nothing to lose. That's why he's going up against the professor, Yulin reasoned. No hacker or codecracker would dare oppose a figure as prominent as Tomonori Risenji otherwise. Ah, fair point. I wonder too, if youth is his true strength, why he's so willing to lay his life on the line in the fight for the digital world. If the digital world could change lives, then the battle was worth fighting if it meant changing the life of the digital world. It didn't hurt that his partner Digimon was right by his side. He decided a long time ago that he would live in the digital world and be a full-time codecracker. I think that was the moment he opened the door, not just to Lugamon's ultimate form, but their mega form as well. All he needed after that was a reason to walk through it, Kosuke mused. Kosuke and Yulin had every reason to hope. Eiji had what it took to win. Kosuke, meanwhile, had one last job to do. His story had come to the worst possible conclusion, but at least he could give his beloved sire a measure of peace. You were like that once, Yulin said, moving closer to Kosuke. Yeah, perhaps I was, Kosuke said quietly. All his life he'd fought through the loss and confusion in the hopes that he'd get her back. Everything he did had been for her. We were all like that once. Now we just have to do what we can. It's okay. I needed to hear that. Thank you, Kosuke said, his breath racked. He sighed heavily and took up the syringe once more. An intense, flickering pillar of light emanating from the stone circle drew Doragoromon and Fenrilugomon's attention. What is that? Professor Risenji said skeptically, peering through Doragoromon's eyes. Whatever it was, he couldn't help but feel it was important. Eiji, too, turned towards the stone circle. Eiji! A voice called out. It was Fenrilugomon. It's them! The light continued to flicker. No pulse. Kosuke, did he administer the medicine? Eiji looked down inside the stone circle, but didn't see any sign of Kosuke or Tyrannomon. Still, he was certain of one thing. Kosuke hadn't given the medicine to the Black Ogremon. He'd used it on Pulsemon. Pulsemon! Leon, come back to us! Eiji screamed. Back in the D4 area of the DDL labs, a lazily beeping pulse picked up speed on one of the monitors. The Digimon linker on Leon Alexander's wrist flicked to life. The rhythmic thump of a heartbeat echoed throughout the source domain. A bolt of light shot from one of the stone circles, charting a zigzag path through the air. Pulsemon! Eiji cried out with joy. Kosuke chose to revive Eiji and Lugamon's friend. Ah, you must be mistaking me for someone else, Pulsemon said as they floated up to Fenrilugomon's nose. Leon, you... Eiji said. It was like Leon and Pulsemon were speaking at the same time, their voices overlaid on one another. Ah, Lugomon, it is you! Hey, Eiji! The medicine produced a result consistent with its trials on Digimon and the results produced by AI simulations. It revived a DMIA patient, and yet something was different. Ah, the shot revived Leon's consciousness inside Pulsemon's Digicore, and his ego is trying to restore his sense of self. He's actively trying to separate from Pulsemon. Fascinating, Risenji said, turning his attention away from the fight. How could he pass up the chance to observe real-time data about the first proper administration of his treatment to a DMI patient? Are you Leon or Pulsemon? AG asked carefully. Both. It's hard to explain. Leon was still mind-linked, but couldn't himself tell where one of them ended and the other one began. They communicated as one entity. Leon, the massive silver dragon said, attempting to insert themselves into the conversation. It's me, Tomonori Rasenji. Professor, why are you in Doragoromon's body? Leon and Pulsemon asked simultaneously. It's a long story. I'm taking the fight to the SOC by fighting Eiji here. He's one of their leaders now. It wasn't exactly a lie, but it eluded a great many facts. You're fighting Eiji? Oh, never mind that now. How long have you been mind-linked? According to my readout, it looks like I still have plenty of time. Oh, that's rather impressive. We're on the other side of the gateway in the depths of the digital world. This place, in particular, is known as the Source Domain. There will be plenty of time to explain later. We mustn't let the codecrackers steal this place from us, huh? Don't listen to him, Leon. He's the one we need to be worried about, Eiji shouted. Pulsemon thought for a moment. They touched a talon to their chin, nodded, and snapped their talons. A moment later, their whole body began to spark and glow. They were digivolving. They tore through their champion form and morphed into their ultimate form, before transforming yet again. When the sparks subsided, Kazuchimon stood tall once more. How is that possible? Leon Alexander went DMIA. His timer ran out because he stayed mind-linked too long. Yulin was dumbfounded. The DMIA recovery medication was originally developed with the goal of extending the amount of time one can remain mind-linked. We were just worried about the side effects, Kosuke explained. The drug worked, and Leon now had additional mind-linking time. Kosuke watched as the empty syringe was deleted from his hand. He had done all that he could. But it seems like Hacker Judge isn't suffering from any of them, and I'm betting he won't stand for this codecracker's behaviour. Leon, remember that you are a hacker, and you will not abide any codecrackers. I understand it must hurt to discover that your childhood friend is your enemy, but you and Kazuchimon must join me in defeating them. Leon, no! Eiji yelled, gritting his teeth as he watched Kazuchimon swing around to stand beside Doragoromon. Some people will trust who they trust, no matter how much you protest and try to convince them otherwise, especially in high-stakes situations. Kazuchimon began concentrating all the nearby electrical energy into a single ball of pulse power, creating energy on par with the nuclear fusion reaction at the sun's very core. The entire projectile was highly compressed, ready to be fired out in a matter of nanoseconds. Shinden Shoraiko! Kazuchimon fired their attack, the very one that not even Machinedramon was able to withstand. The blast made contact with a single outstretched limb, wholly unprepared for the strike. The impact of the blast shot straight into the Digicore, and Kosuke let out an unholy scream of pure anguish from beneath the stone circle's altar. Doragoromon lowered its scorched arm and glared at Kazuchimon. This was the last thing Professor Usenji could have predicted. Leon, he said, his voice shot through with betrayal. Kosuke and Doragoromon's sense of self-preservation had saved him. There was no way Professor Usenji's tools would have delivered the command to defend in time. Just as I thought, Professor. You can hit the legendary Tartarus's partner Digimon with everything you have, but you still can't completely destroy it, Kazuchimon said as Doragoromon dropped to its knees. Professor Usenji released his video projection from Doragoromon once more, eager to show Leon and Kazuchimon his physical form. Why would you do that? Professor Usenji demanded, intending to scold his pupil with a performance full of hurt bewilderment. It wasn't you who brought us back, but Tartarus, Kazuchimon said, remaining on the attack. They unleashed Batmon-style punches that culminated in a swift kick to the stomach, doubling Doragoromon over. Kazuchimon didn't stop attacking until Doragoromon was laid out on the floor. And it was Eiji Nagasumi who came looking for us in the first place. Professor Usenji, meanwhile, sought to use Pulsemon as a prisoner, as leverage. Leon! Eiji shouted. Kazuchimon turned forward for Enrolugomon upon hearing one of their names. I heard the story, AG. Well, most of it. Leon and Kazuchimon said as one. Their voices weren't gaining any separation. Suffice to say, Leon was broadly aware of the discussion that occurred once Professor Isenji warped Pulsemon into the source domain. The lack of separation between him and his partner Digimon was strange. It hadn't been all that long since he went DMIA. It was difficult to say if a small piece of his consciousness remained lodged in Pulsemon's Digicore, or if some other error had led to a sort of shared memory situation. And the hacker judge, paragon of justice, would side with a codecracker? Is that what you mean to tell me? Professor Isenji said, appealing directly to Leon. I cannot abide codecrackers, Leon replied, hesitantly. Quite right. The side effects of this medicine must have confused you. You've only just recovered from being DMIA, after all. There must be an error on... Professor Isenji began, eager to win Leon over. My vital signs are normal, Leon replied, stopping the professor mid-sentence. What I truly cannot abide is the irrational loss of life in the digital world. What I cannot abide is a creature, human or Digimon, playing God with lives which they have no claim. True justice lies in my heart. I have the strength of my convictions, and the sense of justice instilled in me as a hacker tells me that you, Professor Isenji, are the enemy. Kazuchimon drew a lightning-streaked blade and pointed it at the professor. Professor Isenji crossed the one line Leon had. He dared to meddle with Digimon's lives. You know how this ends, Leon Alexander. You'll lose everything. So be it. Justice demands it. I'm right here with you, Leon, Eiji said. At last. They were fighting side by side. I see you managed to digivolve Lugumon to their megaform. All so we could come find you in the digital world, which I owe you an apology. It's my fault you went DMIA in the first place. I'm glad, Leon said with a sigh. You are? It's simple, really. Now that I see you here in Fenrir Lugumon's megaform, I know I can put my trust in you more than the professor. Eiji chose to live and grow alongside Lugumon, forming a natural bond. Professor Isenji, on the other hand, commandeered Dorogoromon by force. He hadn't put in the work. Kazuchimon and Fenrir Lugumon opened up a secret channel where they could freely exchange code with one another without any visible logs. Dorogoromon rose to their feet, arm limp at their side, static and noise spilling from its wounds. Fenrir Lugumon and Kazuchimon stood beside one another, ready for battle. Eiji and Leon holized themselves to engage with Professor Isenji one last time. Professor, Eiji said, staring directly into the old man's eyes, there's one big reason you lost my trust. He couldn't help but notice the professor's video feed was even fuzzier than before. And I don't suppose I can ask what that is? You aren't even here right now. But of course I am. Look, I'm here before you. Except you're not. You're not mindling to any of the Digimon here. You're safe and sound in the DDL labs, because you're a coward who won't risk his life for the digital world. Well, you see, even with the SOC's firepower, there was less than a 50% chance that they would actually reach the gateway and successfully crack it, let alone get past a royal knight. Now, I loathe boredom, but I'm not the type to risk my life for a cheap thrill. I get it, not worth it, when you think about it. However, Eiji began. No one who seeks safety and comfort can win out here, Professor Isenji, Leon said in a rare moment of direct defiance. Well, I never thought I'd be lectured by my own students. Perhaps I've lost my edge. Yeah, could be, Eiji said with a shrug. And so, the hand that feeds is twice bitten. What a day it's been. At this point, I take Kosuke and the district police squad leader's word over yours. The word of the people who actually mind-linked here. Who I can see, and who can see me. That goes for Leon, and above all, for Fenrir Lugumon, the best partner in the digital world. Eiji shouted, flashing the mega-level confidence and pride in his choice to remain a codecracker that allowed him to digivolve his partner to the final form. Do you wish to keep going down this road, Professor? Leon asked directly. Dorogoromon was down one arm, and it would be a 2-on-1 fight. I can see writing on the wall. There would be very little point, Professor Isenji said, through a thick veil of static. I agree, Leon replied. That was meant for you, the professor said. Eiji and Leon tensed up, ready for a fight. They were wrong to let their guards down, especially against the world's foremost authority on the digital world. I have told you again and again that I have crushed upstarts like you before. You play by my rules, the professor bellowed, as another tree diagram split the heavens above the source domain. What's going on? Something's happening at the altar, AG yelled. Have you forgotten that I completely decrypted the data sector of the source domain? 1/3 of its power is already in my hands, the professor gloated, inputting the chain of commands he'd stockpiled. He was on his own journey, and he wasn't about to give up now. He'd fought long and hard, honing his wits in the digital world as he gained power and influence in the real world. Now he aimed to wield them both, build a life in which he was the king. I'm a busy man. I have no time to spare for anything beyond my research. I will make the awesome power of the source domain mine, here and now, he continued. Behind him, Dorogoromon warped and contorted in awful new ways. Kosuke! Yulin shrieked as she watched him bend over backward and drop to the ground. His eyes flew open, wild and wide, and he began convulsing. A moment later, he was still, having lost consciousness. Yulin called his name, to no avail. There was only one thing that could cause such violent reactions. What's Resenji doing to the Digicore? Dorogoromon's body began to stretch and swell, its metal straining and screeching as it tried to contain the burgeoning mass beneath. It looked as something within Dorogoromon was trying to claw its way out. Their cells divided at such an absurd pace that the armour could not longer hold. Larger pieces began to crack while others were flung from its body entirely. Copious amounts of data streamed into Dorogoromons from the massive tree on the ceiling of the source domain. Dorogoromon is downloading data directly from the source Digimon. Not even a mega-level Digimon can handle that much. The professor's going to kill them if they keep it up. This was now a matter of life and death. All Digivolutions in the digital world, to one extent or another. Everything was fight for survival in the digital world. This is bad, Fenrilugomon. Grr, let's go, Kazuchimon, Fenrilugomon barked. Eiji, Leon, and their partner Digimon felt a sense of dread well up beneath them. They had to act. They charged toward their horrific new foe, ready to strike before it could form. Life was fragile, even for Digimon. Death was all too common in the digital world. For those who did not wish to die, however, there was another option. They could feed on the death of other Digimon in a bid to extend their own lives, and, in so doing, open up another phase of Digivolution. Death X Evolution! Chapter 4, Part 12. The changes to Dorogoromon's body were dramatic and terrifying. Fenrilugomon and Kazuchimon took to the air, the former slashing with the hellfire blaze in its legs, the latter with its lightning swords. Professor Usenji's massive download from the source Digimon distended the dragon's body until it lost all shape and form, resembling a wriggling bead of liquid. This feels just like the time we digivolved into Halugomon, doesn't it? It's like an experiment gone wrong, Eiji said of the roiling mass below. It looked like the result of some misbegotten genetic engineering. The data dump melted into the gigantic mass, slowly coating it in static and other visual noise. It was rebuilding itself, mutating into something similar, yet entirely alien. A new type of Digimon, and an ill omen. Professor Usenji named the abomination Dex Dorogoromon. It looked unlike anything in the real world. It was a creature one might see in a dark and unsettling painting, an approximation of an angel of death. And had it carried the Grim Reaper's sickle, no one would have batted an eye. Witness the product of Death X Evolution. I've used data from the source Digimon as a reference to force Dorogoromon into one last Digivolution, creating Dex Dorogoromon, the Digicore Predator. Death X Evolution? Predator? The thought called to Eiji's mind images of all the apex predators. Wolves, lions, orcas. The eaters in an eat-or-be-eaten world. A Digimon that eats other Digimon? Leon said in disbelief. Before either of them could get another word out, Dex Dorogoromon began flapping all 10 of its wings, creating a torrent of damp, sickly air that swirled around the source domain. For some reason, it caused Eiji to recall the loss of his beloved dog. Cancer claimed it in the end. It was the same age as Eiji when it finally passed, which meant it lived a good, long life in dog years. He knew it was time when the poor pup stopped eating. He recalled his parents' surprise that he was the one most devastated by the dog's passing, especially since his mother had been so fond of it. The memories were also clear. Eiji knew at once that just like his aging, suffering pup, Dex Doragoromon was rotting from the inside. He could smell it in the air. "Fascinating! Do you see what's so special about this Digimon, Eiji?" Professor Isenji asked, as though he was running a lecture. Eiji struggled to formulate an answer, and was further interrupted by a wave of data that washed over his virtual monitor. The vast majority of the fields in the analysis sheet were filled in as unknown, but thermal imaging picked up some unusual signatures. "Are those digicores? That thing has multiple digicores inside it," Eiji blurted out. "Exactly so. Very keen eyes you've got there, Eiji. Now, why would one Digimon contain multiple digicores, Leon?"
Dex Doragoromon may be based on Doragoromon, but that's no longer Tartarus's partner Digimon,
Leon shouted, trying to comprehend the situation as much as answer the question. Neither he nor Eiji noticed that Kosuke lost consciousness as a result of the critical error in Doragoromon's Digicore leading up to the Death X evolution. "What did you do to Doremon?" Eiji's demanded. "Doraemon's Digicore is safe. Its major functions have been paused, aside from powering the interface on its head," the professor explained. If it has nothing to more than a vessel, what needs does it have for a personality? Why, its personality might even be a vulnerability, a hindrance." That was how he'd done it. He had disabled Doraemon's security by disabling its core functions and installing all of the data he downloaded from the source Digimon into the unsuspecting creature. Digimon were only supposed to have one Digicore each. That was common knowledge. Yet, this monster had Digicores running along its spine, lined up in spots between the wings that protruded from its backside. Collectively, they appeared to function as an additional Digicore. "The Death X evolution offers Dex Doragoromon new life as an undead type, a Digimon that survives by making use of the Digicores of others." "A zombie, you mean?" Eiji repeated. Visions of zombie flicks and games danced through his head. Undead corpses that bit the living, spreading a virus that killed its host, and brought them back to life as a new conscript in the undead army. The zombies multiply like rats, and humanity is doomed. It was familiar fiction, and occasionally an organism in the real world would be described as behaving in a similar manner, mostly parasites and fungi that proliferate within the host, kill it, then assume control of the host's corpse. It all begged the question, was Dex Doragoromon even a Digimon to begin with? "A quintessential zombie, a single vessel that he consumed and stored the data of countless other Digicores. The armor on its exterior is doing all it can to give the beast shape, but they are ultimately nothing more than restraints, working overtime to keep the vast amounts of Digicore data, its innards, if you will, from bursting out into the open." It was nothing more than a suit of armor possessed by countless spirits all at once. A collection of Digicore data masquerading as a single Digimon. To its credit, the armor kept it looking relatively humanoid, if only so Professor Isenji could easily control it. That was the best theory that Eiji had, anyway. "Death X evolution, as the name implies, is a digivolution en route to death," Professor Isenji said as Dex Doragoromon quietly left the ground. "Doraemon's dying?" "Dex Doragoromon is now the Digimon closest to the source Digimon, the purest expression of Digivolution yet," Professor Isenji shouted with a twist of glee. With decrypted data from just one of the three sectors, Professor Isenji was already closing in on the root cause of Digivolution. The source Digimon. The Digimon that waited at the end, he believed, of a long road of amassing ever more data and forcing countless Digivolutions. The professor imagined that Death X evolution brought one step closer to the source Digimon, an imitation of the very beginnings of digital life. If he was correct, then life was nothing more than a permanent state of death. Metal impulse! The demon wolf laid down. The god of thunder sank to their knees. Venrilugumon and Kazuchimon were helpless in the face of an attack not even Hellfire could stop. Professor Usenji cackled. At the end of our lives, atop a throne of endless beginnings, sits my masterpiece, Dex Doragoromon! Dex Doragoromon scored a direct hit. Eiji sat in the Digicore, unmoving eyes fixed directly ahead. He couldn't tell if this was reality, a nightmare, or both. Seconds later, he was visited by visions of failure and loss. The Source Digimon. If this is the sort of awful thing he can do with just a third of the data decrypted. Eiji muttered this in despair. Venrilugumon tried to establish a protective wall of hellfire that would burn any who touched it. But Dex Doragoromon's attack extinguished it as one blew out a candle. Any Digimon below ultimate level would have been vaporized on the spot. Even in the relative safety of his mega-level Digicore, Eiji could feel the Reaper's sickle at his throat. An undead Digimon. I can't believe it, Leon said. Eiji noticed that Kazuchimon's wreath of lightning had vanished as well. He was researching a zombie virus after all, Eiji said, with a strained smile as he recalled his first visit to DDL. If he managed to fully decrypt the data, it's game over. Yeah, and if he manages to single-handedly control the Source Digimon's power, he'll be a threat to the real world too. He could easily bend it to his will, Leon agreed. Risenji's devilish curiosity and lack of regard for anyone other than himself would cost even more lives than it already had. Dex Doragoromon would rule over a nation of the dead, feasting on their blood. A dark serpent flying over piles of corpses at the end of the world, a shell of its former self. And I should note, I'm not even controlling the creature anymore, the professor said in amazement, his video projection holding its hands up away from the controls. Eiji and Leon couldn't believe their ears. I'm not sending a single command. Dex Doragoromon is a completely autonomous program that follows its own instincts. I may as well be in a self-driving car. Phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal. Now then, Eiji, that just leaves me with the matter of the vaccine-type Rudimon and the virus-type Lugumon. Once I've devoured their Digicores, my work will be complete. The professor's master plan revealed itself. To have Dex Doragoromon simply consume the remaining prototype Digimon cores and function as an all-purpose prototype Digimon. Eliminate the need for cooperation, forced or otherwise. Then I'll finally be able to decrypt the remaining 2/3 of the data. What a journey it's been. Perhaps this last part, at least, will go smoothly. Dorudin! Dex Doragoromon shouted, and still had a command of Doragoromon's attack, but the effect was completely different. Where Doragoromon was a massive shockwave, Dex Doragoromon's was completely silent. Eiji turned to find that a section of the stone circle completely vanished into thin air, as though it had never existed. Dex Doragoromon erased part of the source domain with a single attack. Eiji felt a scream of terror building in the far reaches of his mind. This is real bad! It just vanished! Leon was also at a loss for words. Venrilugumon and Kazuchimon's godlike reflexes allowed them to evade the attack, but that was no guarantee they'd be able to do it again, and there was certainly no way to block it. Get out of here, Eiji, Leon said sternly. What are you talking about? Eiji snapped. He wasn't about to let Leon sacrifice himself again. Think about it. If Dex Doragoromon eats you and Venrilugumon, it's all over, Leon said matter-of-factly. That was the worst-case scenario. Dex Doragoromon ate all 3 prototype Digimon, decoded the rest of the source domain's data, and handed Professor Risenji 100% of the source Digimon's power. Rudimon was still restrained and unable to fight, which meant Eiji was the last line of defense. You're telling me to run, but I can hear the fear in your voice, Eiji said, in an accusatory tone. Leon flashed a pained grin. Dex Doragoromon is scary. So is Professor Risenji, frankly. Leon had looked up to the professor ever since he was a young boy, drawn in by Tomonori's professional charisma. As his respect grew, however, so did fear take root in his heart. He had to muster many times the courage Eiji needed in order to stand up to the professor now, despite being Leon Alexander, the legendary hacker everyone knew as Judge. But I've made up my mind, You searched for me until you found me. So I'm going to fight for you. Fight to protect you. Well, I decline, Eiji shouted. Fenolugamon's fur stood on end. What? I curled up in my futon and cried until I puked. Then I crawled back in the futon and cried some more. And I'm not going to do that again. Eiji wished he could forget that period entirely. But, strangely, though he'd never felt so dead inside in that moment, he was also filled with an intense desire to survive. To work through the pain and carry on living. You cried for me, huh? Even so, I don't think it's wise for you to stay and fight. Shut your trap! Fenolugamon said it themselves. We fought tooth and nail to come to find you both. 'Cause we're pals. I'm not going to turn my back on you now. Pals as in friends? Yeah, even though it can be a pain. Fenolugamon let out a howl that shook the entire source domain. The 10-winged angel of death perked up, like a spider that felt its web shift with the weight of its prey. So we can be friends again? As long as you don't mind me being stuck with me. I know it's not always easy. They turned towards their target, Professor Tomonori Rasenji. I can't do it. I can't beat the professor. Leon, come on! Eiji turned to look at Kazuchimon in disbelief. After all they'd been through, Leon had to be capable of defeating his mentor. The professor means the world to me. He made my life possible. But maybe with you here I can muster the courage. You, Pulsemon, and Lugamon. You overthink things too, don't you? Once a hacker, always a hacker, Leon said. Conflicted as he was, he knew he couldn't stand by and let someone play God. I get it. Us codecrackers don't have it easy either. Listen, I know we're technically on different sides, but I believe in you, Eiji. I believe in your connection to Lugamon. Kazuchimon reached out and touched the interface on Fenolugamon's forehead. That was the signal. Tens of thousands of lines of code flew between the two Digimon, without either of them uttering a word. We're committing to making our way into the digital world, Eiji replied, opening himself to Leon's feelings. You came and found me. Yeah, we did. Eiji had a part to play. The sense of connection, of finding one's way in the digital world, was everything to a codecracker. Eiji, I grant you our power. You've proven yourself to be a true codecracker, and more than capable of wielding it. The Thunder God transformed into a massive blade of lightning. Fusion! Everything moved at the speed of light. Pulsemon's Digicore unlocked a deep-seated memory of the Thunder God known as Taka Mikazuchi, the first sumo wrestler and the God of Swords. It used this memory to transform itself into a sword another Digimon could wield. Kazuchimon was one of the few Mega-level Digimon capable of pulling off such feat. The power of Taka Mikazuchi is yours! Kazuchimon became the Thunder God's longsword, and affixed itself to Glepnir, the ropes that once bound the Godslayer Fenolugamon. Fenolugamon, Taka Mikazuchi, stood ready to do battle with the monster who dared to play God. Fenolugamon wielded just a mighty blade, the pride and joy of the hacker Leon Alexander. Is this how much you've come to despise me, Leon? The professor asked, having weathered the scorn heaped upon him. He stared down the sword containing his pupil. I cannot hold my head high and live with pride until I've bested you, Leon replied. You've gone too far, Professor Rasenji, Eiji added. Fenolugamon took Taka Mikazuchi in their mouth and stood firm. If Tomonori became king of the Source Domain and succeeded in mind-linking with the Source Digimon, he would be unstoppable. You may want to consume everything in sight, but you're about to get eaten yourself. We've got no choice but to fight you for our survival. This was it. Pale blue flame erupted from Fenolugamon's body. Oh shoot! Multiple warnings from Eiji's mind-link timer washed over his virtual monitor. It was all or nothing now. This one attack, the full fury of fire and lightning combined, was their only chance. One strike for the living against a monster who would consume death in the futile attempt to evade it. The Digicore Predator followed its programming, and greedily greeted the charging demon wolf with open arms. I shall consume you! All your abilities, all your effort, your dreams, your future, your life! Professor Rasenji bellowed. Dex Dorogoramon's 10 wings formed a massive maw and opened wide, ready to swallow Fenolugamon. I shall crush you! Shut up! The collective thoughts of Eiji, Leon, Fenolugamon, and Kazuchimon, their friendship, travelled faster than light. Ultimate Warblade Takamikazuchi! Together, their lives in the digital world, and bound their wills together. This wasn't the end. It was merely the beginning. Their sharpened blades struck the opening blow in a brand new story. The end. Okay, so that's actually the end of Chapter 4, and sort of essentially the end of Digimon Seekers. However, the Digimon WebNet Twitter account did mention that there will be an epilogue being released on March 10th. I'm assuming that's Japan March 10th, so March 10th in Australia as well. They don't give a time. I would assume that it's the same as it has been on every other Sunday Japan time, which is I think around midday or so at Japan time. So I will be obviously covering that. I've sort of been flip-flopping back and forth whether or not to include the epilogue as part of this or do it as its own thing. Considering it is an entire month away, that's being the 9th of February, where Chapter 4 Part 12 was released, I've decided to do it separately. So I will be releasing that when it obviously releases, and then I'll do my full Seekers review once that's done. Again, it is a weird place to end the chapter and essentially the story. Usually epilogues are kind of like a where are they now after the climax? Like that's kind of a weird thing to put there. Like to have an epilogue be more or less a Chapter 4 Part 13. It is also weird that we got these daily updates when the next one is going to be released in a month. Like, they could have just continued it weekly and then had the epilogue, like, the following week. That feels kind of weird, considering, what were the last parts? So, it was 4 parts, so they could have exactly had that month of 9, 10, 11, 12, and then just done the epilogue basically on the same day, if my maths is correct there. So that is very weird that they did that. I'm wondering if it's because the Pulsemon BE memory is coming out on the 22nd of February. Still, it is weird that they did daily updates and then still have that epilogue being a month away. That feels kind of weird. But yeah, that's a weird place to end the chapter, especially because the last chapter, Chapter 4:12, was shorter than the previous 2 by about 1,000 or so words. So it is weird that they kind of just left it mid-battle. Again, there is an epilogue which will finish it. I can't judge a story because it hasn't finished. I still am enjoying it. It's a pretty cool chapter. But yeah, that is a weird choice to have these daily updates to rush out of the way before the new BE memory releases still in, more, or basically just under 2 weeks. So that is still weird. They didn't kind of do maybe two parts a week. So, but that's just, I guess that's just Bandai being Bandai there. So of course I can't say my thoughts on this story, on this web novel until it's finished. But I just thought I'd mention that yes, there is an epilogue coming out. It did literally, like, if you're not reading along with Digimon.net, it literally ended with how I ended it, which is their sharpened blade struck the opening blow in a brand new story, the end. That's literally how they finished it. That's weird, because it's not the end if there's an epilogue, and also it's mid-battle. And that's just how I feel on the matter. And it's just a weird choice, but thanks for coming along this journey with me, but even though the journey's not over. So, of course, if you are just listening to Digimon Seekers and using this podcast, first of all, thank you, obviously, but I still recommend you go to Digimon.net. That's the website. Just type it in, Digimon.net, navigate to Digimon Seekers, and kind of click around. I still want Bandai to get the hits on the website, because then they'll get more things like this, especially internationally free releases. I still am a huge fan of the fact that not only is this free and accessible, it's also in English legally. So those are 2 wins for the entire fan base, basically, in my opinion at least. So do still click on the website, still go to the actual chapter pages. Each chapter has, or each segment, I guess, has art. Each chapter has a cute little live action animation, well, live action with CGI kind of thing, so definitely watch those as well. Give Bandai the numbers, but I do appreciate you listening to my own reading of it. Of course, there is a matter of the fact if you are listening to this in 10 years in the future, where Bandai have just decided to get rid of that from their website, that is a concern, because then it will obviously no longer be there, and, websites go down, servers go down, things get removed. So I'm glad at least that if this is like one of the only last traces of Digimon Seekers, thank you for listening in the year 2034 or what have you. So yeah, thanks for listening to this no matter what year you are listening to this in. But so stay tuned for the epilogue March 10th, depending on how I can record it. How do I put this down on my calendar? I'm very optimistic. I hope to release this on the 11th. Lots of stuff coming out the end of February, like the Pulsemon B memory and the Pendulum Colors, so those are also going to be on the YouTube channel. If you're not listening to this on YouTube and you're listening to this on any podcast catcher, check out the YouTube channel. But I'm going to stop rambling now. Again, I'm just going to reiterate this again because I do often get the same question in comments. You can find this on Digimon.net, that's where it's officially released. As of recording this in February of 2024, is there a physical one? Not as of February 2024, there's no physical copy of this. And if there ever is, I can't imagine it being translated into English. But again, that's just what we know from so far. I wouldn't believe... It'd be weird if they just released something now at the end of it, not during, or announced anything. But again, they could announce this for the epilogue. Who knows if they'll even continue on with any merchandise. I felt like Digimon Seekers overall was pretty low in merchandise. So yes, you can read this on Digimon.net. That's where you can read the official release. It is in English. That's what I was reading. I was reading the official English translation for basically Chapter 2 and 3 and 4. Chapter 1, I had to read the on-case translation, but I linked that in the Chapter 1 podcast. But so again, Digimon.net is where the official release is. March 10th is when the epilogue will be released on Digimon.net. I will be doing a separate podcast for the epilogue. As of recording this, the epilogue is the last thing for it, but I wouldn't be surprised if they put an epilogue 2 or an actual epilogue. Like, I feel like the epilogue's just going to be Chapter 4, Part 13, and then we're going to have maybe an epilogue 2. That would make sense in a Bandai way. So anyway, thank you so much for listening. Again, see you next time for the March 10th epilogue. The link dump is linked in the description if there even is a link dump, but check it out anyway. You can contact me and stay updated. You can leave us a comment on this episode on YouTube to join in on the conversation. And for a full list of ways to find the podcast across the internet, such as YouTube, TikTok, Twitch, and Twitter, head over to Linktree/LostinTranslationmon. So that's linktr.ee/LostinTranslationmon. If you enjoy the podcast or videos or even my silly little posts online, you can show your support by signing up on Patreon and get some cool rewards and help me hit some milestones, which they've kind of gotten rid of, but I've still got them there, if that makes sense. Also, another thing is that if you wanted to have all the raw recordings as they were released for Digimon Seekers, I put them all up weekly or daily towards the end of Chapter 4 over on Patreon, so you can check that out. And thank you to my current supporters on Patreon, Stephen Reeves, who is Wild64 on Archive of Our Own, Kaidawashi, Chisai, who can follow on Twitter at Chisai236, Neobu, who says you should follow Chisai on Twitter at Chisai236, Lizmet, who's Lekmon on Tumblr, Nicholas Emery from Welton Will Hunting, a Hunter Hunter World podcast, Magnus Lucas, Jason105, Patrick Jason, Shelby Digital Hazard, who's on Twitch at The Digital Hazard, Tropiumon, Vmon Tamer, Kasai, Big Bad Beetle Borg, and Banter Archer. You can also make a donation on PayPal, which can be found linked in the description. It's paypal.me/airdramon. You can also donate to me on my Ko-fi account, ko-fi.com/airdra. And again, thank you so much for listening to this. Thank you for supporting me through this. This is something that was requested basically as soon as Digimon Seekers was announced, that people saying, hey, I want an audio reading for this. I'm not really a fan of web novels or reading, but I really like listening to things, or they want something to listen to on their commute, and each chapter being several hours gives a lot of content to listen to. So thank you so much for listening in on this, and If you want further thoughts about Digimon Seekers, I have many videos on Seekers, and I will do more as the epilogue comes out. So, of course, if you are watching / listening to this on YouTube, do the usual like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell, etc., etc. I kind of busted my voice almost doing the Rusenji laugh. I hope that sounded cool and impressive and wasn't really cringy. I tried to, like, put effort into, like, doing the voices. Again, I'm not a voice actor. I'm not a professional reader of books or acting or anything. I'm just a dude who has a podcast who likes Digimon. So, if you want to roast me for the voices, that's cool. You can do that. I like to think that I've got fairly thick skin, but just remember, I'm not a professional voice actor. I've had no training for acting or voice acting. So if you want to roast me, you can, but I know I'm bad. I know I'm just a dude, not a voice actor. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed it. And yeah, like, comment, subscribe, 5-star rating on podcast catchers if they allow that. And I guess I'll see you on March 10th for the epilogue, or in any of the other videos if you are watching them on YouTube. So I will see you then. Bye bye!